Hello, romance lovers. Today's story is called The Gardener from the Magic Garden. If you enjoy our videos, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss out on more exciting stories. She grabs the spirit by the shoulders and asks if he knows who grew the tree, but the spirit only bows its head slightly depressed and waves its head. The young lady asks if there is anyone among the imperial gardeners who could do something like this, but at that very moment she comes to a realization. The girl drops her hands and understands that even if there is one, the spirit will still not tell her. The young lady bites her nail and realizes that perhaps she should have prepared purified water in advance. The spirit only remains silent. And then he puts his hand on the main character's head and asks her to be careful, because a young lady must take care of herself. After this, he leaves, leaving the young lady alone with her thoughts. The main character tells the spirit as he leaves that the reason he is telling her this now is because he doesn't have much time left. After Sharabi is left alone, she touches a tree that seems to feel all her pain. Tara comes up to her from behind. He tries to calm and support the main character. In the evening, the young lady sits all tear-stained and with wet hair. The guy combs her curls and asks him to listen, because the girl's head will split later, so she should stop crying. But the main game only makes me scream for him to shut up. But suddenly her gaze falls on the basket standing on the table behind them. The main character picks up the letter from it and asks where it comes from. The guy replies that it was lying under the door and the young lady was unable to read anything, so he put it on the table. When Sharabi opens it, she sees words of gratitude and a drawing. The young man asks if this is a reply letter from that little girl. The main character smiles and says that she thought the little girl couldn't even read properly, but apparently she was wrong. A young lady looks at a bottle of leaves and wonders if they are tea leaves. But suddenly she feels terribly sleepy, so the girl decides that she will understand when she brews them. She leaves tea leaves on the table and realizes that she is terribly tired today. Tara tells her to at least dry her hair, but he can see that the young lady is truly tired, so the guy sighs and says nothing more. A little while later, he enters the main character's room and covers her up. The young lady opens her eyes and asks why he doesn't nag at her. The guy with purple hair says that some days you can do without it. Sharabi can't help but laugh at these words. The young man, realizing that she's laughing, blushes a little. He claims that anyway the young lady has no work tomorrow so she can get a good night's sleep. Then he turns to her, wishes her good night and sweet dreams. And a few hours later, the main character is already sitting in the Emperor's garden next to a mug of tea. Sharabi was summoned to the imperial palace where she met with the crown prince. The young lady, all sleepy, asks why His Highness called her. He casually says that he doesn't know and then asks if he really needs a reason to call her to him. The main character says she thinks a reason is needed. But then she realizes she is a simple person, and the crown prince is sitting in front of her. So the lady with the pink hair corrects herself and says that she meant that she wished there was a reason. The ruby-haired guy crosses his legs and says that the girl doesn't know how to hide her emotions, but it doesn't matter because he likes her privacy. The crown prince says that now that he has seen her withering gaze, he can say that he called her for two reasons. The first one is about the preparations for the founding festival, because the young lady needs to decide on the concept, and he is interested in how much progress has been made in the last few days. But the young lady seems hurt by these words. The prince continues and says that since he spent a significant amount of money on this, he has the right to receive a report on the work done. The main character says that it is, but dragging a person out of bed is a bit much. The red-haired boy says that he is a busy man, and the one who received the money must adjust to the schedule of his employer. The young lady understands that there is no arguing with this, so she turns to the servant and whispers to Togo to rescue her from there under the pretext of urgent work. Well, when the girl understands that this won't work, she admits that she hasn't even started doing anything. But anyway, in a week, everything will definitely be ready, because the plants will be grown in a not entirely ordinary way. The crown prince folds his arms and says that is also true, and Sharabi asks if she can now hear the second reason why he summoned her. The prince smiles and looks away. He claims that, as he said earlier, he is a busy man. But he doesn't even have time to visit the mansion on the hillside that the girl brought to life. So he tried to console his heart by looking at Sharabi instead, because she looks so much like those pink trees. The guy folds his arms and says that after they started talking and preparing for the festival in honor of the founding of the country, then something else interested him. After that, the guy asks what the limit of her abilities is. The young lady looks at him and thinks that she has never given other people clear explanations about her abilities. Whether it was the power of the earth or water, the people who made deals with her could only make assumptions. But no one knew the exact answer to this question. But this man is convinced that she grows plants using her abilities. Therefore, the main character only asks if he orders her to tell about his skills. The guy bangs on the table and insists that everything is not like that at all and he was just asking. Then the main character says that in that case, she won't say anything, because who would just share such information? She looks at him with some disdain and claims that it is not fair if they do not trust each other 100%. Everyone in this world is born with different abilities, but it is difficult to determine exactly what powers a particular person has. This is because all people with abilities are slow to reveal their skills and limits. There are many reasons for keeping them secret, and of course, the most important one is your own safety. All skills have their weaknesses, and revealing your abilities is the same as revealing your vulnerabilities. Therefore, in this world, there are unspoken rules not to delve too deeply into the abilities of others. When people tell someone about their abilities, it means that they completely trust this person. Then the Prince of Heritage simply says the word eyes. The main character does not understand what he is talking about and asks about it. But the guy only adds that this is his ability. If he wants, he will be able to see the entire capital from there, right to its outskirts. The main character is a little shocked by this, because can a person who is the crown prince so easily reveal his abilities? Besides, the imperial palace itself is terribly huge. But how capable do you have to be to see the entire capital from there? The main character thinks about all this a little. She then turns to the crown prince and claims that her ability is that she can talk to plants. The girl constantly developed it, so the range of possibilities in various nuances expanded significantly. The ruby-haired youth asks what these nuances are and asks for an example. But at that very moment, a maid bursts into the garden. She is out of breath and apologizes for interrupting the conversation, but an emergency has arisen. The main character turns around and asks what happened. The maid whispers all this to the servant. Then he comes to the table and asks Sharabi to listen calmly, because she is in her shop. The crown prince uses his ability at this time and sees that the entire shop is engulfed in flames. So before the servant can finish, he says that there was a fire there. The main character at this moment feels empty inside. Her legs feel like cotton wool. So the girl falls to the floor. The crown prince runs up to her, asking Sharabi to calm down and come to her senses. After this, the ruby-haired youth claims that he will send knights there immediately. But at this time, Tara appears in the air. He takes the main character in his arms and disappears with her. The crown prince realizes that it was definitely Tara just now. The guy is trying his best to get to the shop as quickly as possible. The ruby-haired boy thinks for a moment. He realizes that that guy was next to that child. At this time, the main character and Tara are trying to get through the crowd. When they finally reach the burning building, the young lady looks at him in horror. People are trying to put out the fire with water. Some of them are shouting to pour more water. The young lady hears the cries of all the spirits. They desperately ask Sharabi for salvation. The main character pushes Tara away at the same moment. The young man asks her to just wait, but Sharabi is already running as fast as she can. In her thoughts, she asks the distraction to hold on a little longer because she is already on her way. But suddenly, someone grabs the young lady by the hand. The main character screams to be let go. This guy turns out to be that same knight. He says that he can't, because it's just hell inside now. He claims that he cannot allow the young lady to fall into eternal sleep. The main character remembers how she died in a past life, and when she woke up, she found herself in this world. She cries out that even if a person dies, he can be reborn. The purple-haired guy doesn't understand what she's talking about. Sharabi, with tears in her eyes, says that spirits have only one life. Then the guy can hear the cries of spirits, and he asks if there are really people left inside. The main character claims that even if the knight tries to stop her after hearing the voices of spirits, he cannot be considered a human. After that, she runs straight into the flames. Tara sees this and goes after her, the knight biting his lip. But he decides not to remain idle, so he cries out asking to listen to him, and then asks if there are people there who have the power of water. After all, this is not a simple fire, and the shop was set on fire by the power of fire. When the main character goes inside the building, she sees a spirit there. She, in horror, asks Togo to wait and promises that she will stop the fire at any cost. But the spirit claims that he didn't come there for that. He apologizes to Sharabi and says that he's sorry that he didn't give her time to prepare, but he asks her to take care of the others. The spirit places his hand on Sharabi's head and smiles sincerely. He says that if a miracle ever happens, they will be together again. But he doesn't have time to finish this phrase before the fire burns his soul to the end. The main character is in despair. She screams out all sorts of things. After this, he collapses to the ground, trying to collect the remaining particles of spirit. But the spirit of the old tree immediately released all its remaining powers. The flames were extinguished by the soaring rays of light. The stop of color was so huge that the entire capital saw it. The spirit of the old tree eventually died out, and although the shop was not damaged at all, the garden burned to the ground. The main character can't hold back her tears because of this. Tara, seeing this, feels all this pain. He approaches Sharabi and hugs her. But suddenly, a drop with magical power falls to the floor. This power spreads throughout the garden, bringing life to all the plants. Then the knights run into the garden and ask where Sharabi is. And when the knight with purple hair sees her, he asks if she is okay. But in front of them, they see a beautiful picture of Tara and Sharabi hugging and a green garden around them. One of the people claims that he used to think that the girl gardener was an ordinary child who was characterized by impatience. But now that he has seen something like this, he wonders if she is the goddess of the forest herself. A few days later, the purple-haired boy claims that the one who started the fire was Sharabi. The young lady says that it looks like it, and she even guesses who could have done this. Although these are only assumptions. The main character looks at the bottle of tea and asks what is wrong with these tea leaves. The guy claims that having revived the garden, the girl slept for 4 whole days. During this time, he conducted an investigation during which he also checked this gift, and it looks like the tea leaves contain poison. If the girl had drunk tea that day, she would not have been able to escape and would have suffocated in the smoke. After these words, the young lady comes to a realization and grabs the bottle from the guy's hands. But when she opens it and smells it, she realizes it's Lefilea. The young man does not understand what she is talking about and asks about it. But the main character says that these tea leaves smell like Lefile. Sharabi immediately jumps up from the table and claims that he is going to the Imperial Palace because the criminal is there. The guy asks why she suddenly decided to go there. But the young lady insists that they must put an end to this as soon as possible, and she certainly will not go alone. Tara says that it is natural since he is her companion, but when he turns around, he sees many plant spirits. The young man is a little surprised, and the main character says that someone dared to touch her in the garden, and the offender must pay for it. Sometime later, in the Imperial Palace, Sharabi says that she has already received permission from His Highness the Crown Prince, and he asked her not to use her hands too much. The girl remembers the servants and asks if they are all under her control until the end of the festival in honor of the founding of the country. The servant only whispers to the main character whether the prince gave her permission and simply left, and she replies that she thinks he is hiding somewhere nearby, and if he meets him, then let him bring him there. After which, the main character enters the room with the gardeners. She passes by, looking at each of them, but when she approaches the last one's place, she realizes that someone has not shown up. She looks at the servants and asks if she didn't say that everyone should come. One of them thinks that this little idiot managed to get the support of the crown prince, but that doesn't mean she has become above them. That's why the guy claims that they themselves can convey everything to the absent ones. And if the girl has something to say to them, then wouldn't it be better to get down to business quickly? Sharabi is shocked by such impudence. She approaches the guy and asks if she tells him that this is the crown prince. Will he also answer in a similar way? The young lady glared at him. Sharabi was originally an ordinary garden shop owner, so she was far removed from the imperial gardeners. However, as long as she carries out her duties under the crown prince's orders, the young lady's words carry the same weight as His Highness's. She points at one of the gardeners, who asks what she wants but immediately corrects himself. The main character orders him to immediately bring the missing person. A few seconds later, the fairies tell the young lady that they are coming, and that same man comes in. And even his smell still hasn't gone away. This smell is the smell of burning. At this moment, a lady with maroon hair enters the room. As Sharabi suspected, the missing man was the criminal. The main character says that she didn't even think that she could be caught, but her interlocutor pretends that she doesn't understand anything. Then the main character grabs her by the collar and asks if the girl really thinks she's such a pumped-up girl. She also asks what you were thinking when you looked at the garden on fire. The red-haired lady's eyes narrow slightly at such accusations, but she immediately plays dumb and claims that she doesn't understand what Sharabi is talking about. The main character asks if she doesn't understand. She lets the villainess go and says that in that case, she will explain everything to her. The girl uses her power and plant spirits immediately appear in the air. The other gardeners are shocked by this because those spirits appeared out of nowhere. The main character says that the girl with red hair gave the order to the little girl and got Lefilea, and then sent tea containing her paralytic poison to her house and set the garden on fire. Sharabi asks if it was nice to see those children suffering and screaming in pain. The lady with red hair asks what she is talking about. Doubts begin to creep into the minds of the other gardeners, and one of them asks if Susan really did it. But the girl says that this is not true and she would never do that. But the fairy with green hair says that she saw her face that day. She woke up calmly in the morning, but the first thing she saw surprised her. After all, it was that same woman, and flames were coming from her hands. The fairy claims that such a lie will not work on her. The lady with red hair is shocked. She doesn't know what to answer to this. The main character just comes close to her and claims that this is a decision that all the plants of the capital have made, and not just her. From now on, no plant Susan tries to grow will follow her plans. Every plant, whenever it takes root, will be set against her. And even medicinal herbs will turn into poison if she decides to use them. For such is the verdict of the spirits. The lady with red hair is terrified. She falls to the ground, clutching her head. The main character looks at her like she's a nobody and then turns to the other gardeners. She says that if anyone else is unhappy with her work, she wants them to come forward and say it to her face. But no one is going to do that. Then the young lady smiles and says that if there are none, then they can now begin to discuss the festival in honor of the founding of the capital. After all this, the main character feels very tired, so she lies down on the bed. The girl thinks that even though the bed is soft, it still feels like it's not hers. Several days had already passed since that incident, and the imperial gardener, who had been declared a criminal to the end, denied his involvement in the fire. But a little while later, when she was eating a salad, she suddenly felt very ill. Therefore, the girl immediately rushed to the bushes located nearby. She was horrified by the realization that Sharabi's words could be true. But when she looked at her hand, she saw that the plants underneath it had turned black. The girl immediately jumped back in horror. Then she was convinced of the curse of the spirits. Susan immediately pestered Sharabi with significant monetary compensation. The lady with pink hair understands that she has accepted this money. But even if she begs her on her knees, the decision is still made by the spirits. In addition, the villainess took the life of the spirit of the old tree and Lafile. So the young lady just turns around and wonders if this is her concern. But it will be a great experience anyway. The young lady tosses and turns on her bed and thinks that even though this situation arose because of the renovation of her shop, in the end she got a chance to stay for a while at the Imperial Palace. But then something else catches Sharabi's eye. The girl immediately gets up from the bed and heads to the window. After this, she rubs her eyes and looks at the garden. Then the girl goes down into it. She thinks that she definitely felt a strange energy there. So the young lady wonders if it was a spirit. At this time, several spirits fly up to the main character and ask if the girl has come to take care of them. But Sharabi says that she too doesn't live by work alone. Then the young lady turns around and continues her search. One of the trees asks her if she is looking for something, and then asks if she wants to climb it and look down on it. The main character realizes that maybe this is what she should do, after which she climbs that tree. But when the young lady reaches the top, her dress gets caught on a branch. This causes the young lady to lose her balance and fall backwards. She is scared that she is about to fall, so she closes her eyes. But when she opens them, she sees that she is in the hands of a knight. The guy asks if she is okay. Oh, the main character looks at him, not understanding what is happening. But then he realizes that it will open and claims that he is completely fine. She jumps out of his arms and brushes the dust off her dress. The purple-haired boy looks at her and remembers all the events that happened in the garden. He asks if Sharabi is better, and the main character asks what he is talking about. He also replies that he is talking about the incident with the garden, and her shop was also badly damaged by the fire. The main character says that, fortunately, the fire did not penetrate the interior of the store, and she has already started repairs using the compensation she received. But then she frowns a little and says that thanks to His Highness's generosity, she was able to stay for a while at the Imperial Palace. She remembers how the ruby-haired boy said that until the store was renovated, Sharabi didn't know where to stay. He turned to Glem and told him to order everything to be prepared, and the servant obeyed his master. The young lady asked him what he was talking about and whether he would like to hear her opinion on the matter. But His Highness only asked whether it should concern him. The lady with pink hair was shocked by such words. They even left her in a stupor. But then the main character gets furious and screams that even if the imperial family lives happily, to some extent not listening to anyone's opinion, one cannot be so deaf. The main character is almost seething with anger when she remembers these events. But she sighs and tells the knight that in any case, everything is fine now. She claims that the birth and disappearance of spirits is a kind of providence of nature. The knight asks if she means that when a tree dies, it is like the death of a person. The young lady sees a fairy on his shoulders and says that she thinks that's exactly what it is, but maybe such an incident is even more serious than people leaving life. The guy gets down on one knee and takes the main character's hand in his. He tells Sharabi with a smile on his face that he is still waiting. He claims that he is talking about the answer regarding the festival. But a moment later, he rises and says he is glad to see that the young lady is all right, and then bids her farewell and leaves. The fairies surround the main character. They ask if this is the person Sharabi likes, and also if he is her lover. The young lady screams that everything is wrong, and then she turns around and says that she must find what she was looking for. One of the fairies asks what the girl is looking for and answers the main character that she felt a strange energy, and it seems to belong to a spirit. But for some reason, the aura is somehow dark and unnatural. A pair of fairies exchange glances. They then turn to Sharabi and say that it may be a spirit that devours people's souls. The fairy claims that one day a high-ranking man living there touched that tree and has been unconscious ever since. And the fairy also heard that the crown prince, who is very kind to the lady right away with her hair, comes every day to look at the face of his younger brother. The main character says that it turns out that the prince was the victim and asks when this happened. One of the fairies claims that it was about a month ago and he should have died on the west. But apparently, thanks to the fact that he used his ability, he managed to survive. He separated his soul from his body and ran away so that he wouldn't be caught and eaten. The main character is shocked by such words. Now she understands that the spirit of the old tree gave her advice about this story. The young lady does not understand what to do and where to find that tree. She continues on her way and thinks about what she should do. But suddenly she hits her head on someone and then falls to the ground. When she looks up, she sees the crown prince. The ruby-haired boy asks what she is doing in a place like this all alone. Sharabi greets His Highness, who says that it seems the girl was looking for something. The young lady immediately jumps up and asks what he's talking about, but then says that she was trying to find inspiration for the country's founding festival because they need some unique decoration ideas. The prince just laughs. He says he didn't know the young lady had enough motivation to voluntarily work overtime and without additional pay. The young lady realizes that she has been found out about this and decides to tell the truth. She says that she feels some strange energy nearby. His Highness approaches her and asks what this strange energy is. He grabs the main character by the hand and asks if she has discovered something or if it is just her intuition. But suddenly the boy's gaze falls on something else. The crown prince is surprised because now he can see fairies. One of them flies up to him and claims that it looks like this man can see them now. The main character says that in front of His Highness are now the spirits of the vegetation surrounding him. The ruby-haired boy remembers the main character talking about her ability. He lets go of her hand. And then she says that she had said earlier that she could hear the voices of plants. But now the ability has become stronger, and she has become capable of doing even such things. He says that the girl's ability is closer to shamanism than to the field of gardening. A shaman is a person who can communicate with spirits. The crown prince thinks about something and then turns to Sharabi. He tells her to follow him because they need to go somewhere. As they walk deeper into the forest, the pink-haired lady asks where they are going, and His Highness states that they are heading to the garden. The main character is confused. She does not understand why she feels something more than just the energy of other spirits. She looks at His Highness and remembers the dark energy. So the girl grabs the crown prince by the hand and tells him to wait. When the guy turns around, the young lady asks if it is ahead, and if so, then she will go on alone. The ruby-haired guy asks why, and the young lady notes that if he goes to take it off, his body will be in danger. She says she feels a presence of something dark and sinisterly twisted ahead. But if it is a spirit, she will be able to study its state. His Highness stops, he thinks whether he should do this. The ruby-haired boy ruffles his hair a little, and then deciding to say that he would look after her from there. When the main character enters the territory of that garden, she realizes that it is very quiet there, and this seems strange to her, because she hardly hears the voices of other spirits. The young lady feels uneasy about this. She turns around but suddenly hears someone's voice. It turns out to be Tara telling the young lady not to go any further. The main character asks why he is there and whether he hasn't read the book. But the guy just goes up to Sharabi and says that he should ask her what she forgot there. My girlfriend didn't come back for a long time and he went to look for her because he thought that she was lost. The main character says that she is not lost at all, and in any case, he should also stay away from that place. After all, the tree that is in front exudes quite a strong resentment, so she is gathering. But the main character doesn't have time to finish speaking before the guy immediately stands in front of her. He tells the girl not to go there because it is dangerous. But the lady with pink hair only asks how he knew there was danger there. After this, the young man only brings her to the palace. The main character turns around and realizes that there is not a soul there. After that, they approach the doors and Tara opens them. The main character feels a creepy energy emanating from that room. and in the middle of the room lies a man with a blackened hand. Tara only says that if she comes closer to that tree, it will be bad. The main character approaches that bed and sees a guy who looks like Tara. She is shocked by this, and the young man claims that, being near the tree, Sharabi can also become like this. So he asks now that she has seen this, whether she is still going to go. He claims that although the girl is a talented gardener, it is unlikely that anything can be done about this problem. After that, there is silence between them. The young man looks at Sharabi. He puts his hand on his forehead and says that he was going to tell her everything one day. But the main character only claims that it was him. She says he was that ignorant prince. The main character says that she did not see the tree, but even from a distance she felt someone's presence, and the guy managed to touch it. The young man asks if she is surprised, but Sharabi asks what he is talking about. Then the guy asks if she feels deceived. Because the fact that he is a prince, the main character does not let him finish, and asks if he is talking about the fact that he hid it from her. The guy looks away. The main character says that she doesn't like to complicate her life. She asks if the guy ever tried to hurt her because she doesn't remember anything like that. Then she asks what problems there might be. The girl says it's a little different from other perfumes, but she just thought there must be a reason for that. The guy says that it works even after knowing everything, but Sharabi interrupts him and says that now that she knows this, she finds the situation a little strange. After all, even if someone is cursed by a tree for some reason, that person usually turns to a healer, not a gardener. The guy just hangs his head. The main character turns to him and smiles, and then asks where this tree is. The guy goes to the window and opens the curtains. Then the main character can see that dark energy. When the girl looks closely, she sees a spirit there, radiating dark energy. The main character is shocked by what she saw. The female spirit flies closer to her. She says that someone came again, and then she asks if this is another stupid ability user. The main character looks at her and claims that the girl is not a spirit. The woman approaches her and asks if she sees it, but says something that whether she is a spirit or a demon is of no concern to the young lady, because the girl will die soon anyway. The woman claims that today she went out to greet a guest, and as soon as she finishes all the business with the prince, he will do the same to her. The main character clenches her teeth, and then he turns to Tara and says that everyone needs to be warned of the danger, because this demoness is apparently determined to lure more people and steal their souls. Then the two of them leave the building, and the main character sighs. But when she raises her head, she sees the crown prince. The girl understands that if she thinks about it, since Tara is a prince, it turns out that they are siblings, and now she understands why they seemed so similar. The main character tells His Highness the Crown Prince that she is inside, but he doesn't let her finish and asks if she saw Tara there. The young man is shocked by this. He touches the main character and approaches his brother. Then he asks how he found out. The Crown Prince claims that he found out he was a charade when her garden shop caught fire, and perhaps Tara's meeting with her was inevitable. The red-haired guy is silent for a while, and then he turns to Sharabi. When the main character comes unstuck, the prince asks if she can deal with this problem. The young lady remembers Tara lying on the bed and says that there is a chance. Then the Crown Prince sighs and tells her to name her price. He claims that he will pay whatever she says, but the main character says that she will not take the money. The purple-haired boy is in shock, and the main character says that she simply cannot allow her friend to die. And even if His Highness ordered her to take on this matter, she would have done it anyway. The lady with pink hair says with a smile on her face that she doesn't need anything. Well, then she realizes something and says that she can't solve this problem right now, and it will take some time, so His Highness should wait until after the founding festival. And the young lady also asks if she can use the library of the Imperial Palace. A little while later, Sharabi is sitting with a book, and it feels like her head is about to split in two. After which, the girl lies down on the table and says that it is as if she is taking a math exam again. Tara puts down her mug of tea and says she should get some rest. But the young lady just jumps up and asks who she is trying so hard for, and then asks if he has forgotten. But then the girl remembers that he is a prince and addresses him as you. The guy just smiles and tells her to just talk to him like before, because she even communicates quite freely with his brother. The main character remembers how she said that if she thinks about it, how can she now treat him so disrespectfully? Well, the guy replied that if it was an unimportant official meeting, then he didn't care at all. After that, the two of them looked at the Crown Prince. He asks why they are staring at him and whether he is their main villain. And after that, he says that the young man can do whatever he wants and asks if the guy isn't her best friend. Now the young man says that his brother said so. And then he turns to the main character and asks if she dug up anything, but the young lady replies that she did not. She claims that the matter cannot be done without shamanism. She is going to ask the shaman about it. The young man asks if she is going to do it, and the main character replies that she is. Sharabi says that among her friends there is a shaman who made a contract with the spirit of water. Abilities like hers are rare, and perhaps the guy has even heard her name, because she is from the Zelban Empire. Tara approaches the young lady and asks if she is talking about Yuvlin. The main character says that then the guy really knows her, and he replies that shamanism is an extremely rare ability. And, besides, as far as he knows, there is only one shaman in the Zelban Empire. Sharabi says that the guy must have studied hard since he is so well informed even about a foreign country. But Yuvlin is a famous figure in the Empire who has given up his title and works in a mercenary unit. Most likely, she is very busy, so it is not a fact that she will go to such a distant place in response to Sharabi's call. The main character bows her head and says that for her, she is only a stalker, but the girl remembers how Yuvlin followed her around. The main character claims that if she says she is busy and can't come, she will just catch her and bring her there. The girl picks up a piece of paper and doesn't understand how to write it. Tara smiles and looks at what the lady with pink hair writes. But when he reads what was written, he is shocked. The guy reads that she wrote hello and that she has business with Zelban, and then wrote that if she says that she is busy, she will no longer be alive. After writing the sheet, Sharabi gets up and thinks about whether she should prepare purified water before Yurban arrives. And the young man is still looking at the ink-stained sheet in shock. But the main character comes up to him from behind and pats him on the back, and then leaves. When she leaves the room, the young man sighs and puts his hand on his back. And then he blushes, because Sharabi's hand was there a little while ago. A few days later, the main character is already heading somewhere with a basket full of jars. But someone comes up to her and takes it from her hands. It turns out to be the same knight with purple hair. He asks what all this is and where the young lady is going with it. After this, as they walk down the road, the main character replies that this is purified water and she is going to take it to the Imperial Palace. The knight asks what purified water is, and the main character replies that he can think of it as an additive that one specific tree needs. The guy says that the girl must have received some order from His Highness. And then he asks if the preparations for the festival in honor of the founding of the country are going well. The main character remembers that festival, and then a memory enters her mind that the knight asked her to go with him. The lady with pink hair says that in general, but the guy interrupts her and says that he is not going to rush the young lady with an answer so she can calmly make any decision. And when the young man raises his head and sees that they have arrived, he puts the basket with jars on the floor. And he tells the main character that he will go, and then wishes her a good day. Tara watches as the guy leaves. He narrows his eyes a little as he looks at him. The main character thinks she says that it is still a little strange because that person, Kyle. Tara asks what is wrong with him, and the main character replies that he is obviously human, although she suddenly felt some very familiar energy. The guy asks if this is familiar energy, and the young lady replies that it is. They met him only recently, but for some reason it seems to her that she has already encountered similar energy. The young man feels the dark energy, and suddenly the realization comes to him. So the guy says that now what is more important is that the place she is heading to is. The main character compliments his speech and says that everything is correct, and this is his palace. When the main character enters this territory, she opens a bottle of purified water, and this allows you to trap the dark energy in a jar. Tara is shocked by this. He says that these bottles contain purified water. The main character opens another one and says an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. She places these jars everywhere to clear the area of poison, and this energy even surrounds the dark tree. The main character looks at what is happening there, and the woman made of wood apparently cannot get beyond the limits of that energy. The main character says that although the problem will not be solved completely, it will allow them to buy a little time. And the catch is that they are now in the Imperial Palace. The young man asks what is wrong with the Imperial Palace, and the main character answers that the spirit of that rotten tree is quite strong, and perhaps he will be able to attack them in other ways, because there are many opportunities for this. The guy asks what these other ways are and asks her to give an example, but the young lady puts her finger to her mouth and suggests that the guy quickly return back, because for some time this purified water will act as a barrier. And during this time, the young lady would like people not to approach this place. She leaves in hopes that she can prevent any unnecessary fuss from occurring. The spirit from the rotten tree is trying to get out of the barrier at this time, but when she touches him, her fingers immediately turn black. The spirit of this rotten tree curses the main character and says that she is a damn gardener. The woman asks if she thinks that her cute tricks will have any effect, because the woman has many more aces up her sleeve than she thinks. At this time, a small white mouse runs past. The brunette sees this and sends dark energy to the animal. When the mouse senses it, its eyes turn red. The animal sniffs something and then runs away. Apparently, the woman already has it under control. At this time, the maid calmly walks with a basket of things. She doesn't even suspect that that same mouse is standing behind the door. The young lady continues on her way, and the rodent jumps out at her from behind. Hearing some sounds, the maid turns around. When she looks at them, she sees a rat. She drops the basket of things and screams, but then the door opens behind her, and the white shirt flies away. The maid looks at it in shock, and then she tries to get it. But no matter how hard she tries, she can't. So, a little while later, she comes out with a lamp. The girl wanders around the garden, and you think, what the hell is this? The young lady thinks how unlucky she is. But then she sees a shirt lying in the grass. But when he tries to lift it, he sees a bottle with dark energy. The girl picks it up and wonders what it is, and where that bottle could have come from. At this time, the same rat is watching her, and a moment later, it jumps on the girl. The maid is very scared of the rodent, so she takes the bottle out of her hands and it breaks into pieces. The rat runs away, and the maid's dress is all stained with dark energy. After this, the same woman from the rotten tree comes out to her. The maid is very scared by this and screams. Already in the morning, while the main character is peacefully sleeping, one of the knights knocks on her door and shouts to Sharabi to open the door. The main character is already going down the stairs and asking what time it is, and who the hell can be breaking in so early in the morning. After so much time, she finally returned home and is going to get a good night's sleep. The girl comes to the door and says that she is busy preparing for the festival in honor of the founding of the country. She opens the door and says that she will not be taking regular orders for a while, but a spear is immediately pointed at her throat. The main character looks up and sees that these are Imperial Knights. Among them all is the same knight with purple hair. The girl asks why they are doing this, but they only say that this is what should be expected from a shameless villain who ruined someone's life. He orders the other knights to arrest the criminal. The main character asks what this means, and she didn't put anyone into eternal sleep. The girl turns around and asks what they mean, but still doesn't get an answer. And the knights only drag her into a carriage that looks like a cage. The young lady says to call His Highness the Crown Prince, and he will prove her innocence. But one of the guards asks how some commoner dares to demand that a royal person be called to her. He claims that His Highness the Crown Prince is not in the capital at the moment, and he was forced to leave on state business. Then the lady with pink hair says that she needs to be told what's going on, because she doesn't even know why she was arrested. Then the guy gets up from his seat and approaches the main character. And then he leans towards her and says that he doesn't think the girl really knows anything. He pokes her in the forehead and says that yesterday, when she came to the Imperial Palace, many saw that she was carrying some bottles with unknown contents in a basket. The young lady asks what's wrong with the bottle theme, but the guy claims that a person died in the garden. The maid was found lifeless next to the same broken bottle. Her whole body turned black. The main character, hearing this, is in shock and asks again if anyone died. But the guy claims that he is not finished yet, and says something about how her body turned black, reminiscent of the black spot on the prince's hand that lies in his chambers, and therefore the crime of which the young lady is accused. The main character does not let him finish, and says that this is an attempt on the life of a member of the imperial family. The guard asks if she understands what situation she is now in. He claims that this is not just a plunge into eternal sleep, and perhaps the matter will even reach the ears of His Imperial Majesty. The main character curses that rotten tree, but then she sighs and tries to calm down. The young lady understands that with such accusations, she will definitely face execution. No one knows about the conversation that took place that day between the Crown Prince, Tara, and Sharabi, except for them. If His Highness the Crown Prince has left the capital on state business, there is only one person left who can prove her innocence. In his case, the poison was able to consume an entire hand with just one touch, and now the woman made of rotten wood easily finished off a man. The young lady asks Tara not to do anything stupid in the heat of the moment. At this time, the young man's hand twitches, and then the maid enters the room with flowers. She looks at the old withered flowers and changes them. The girl understands that everything has dried up again. She says what a poor prince he is and asks what kind of illness he has. But when she turns around, she sees that the prince is sitting. The girl screams and turns to His Highness, and the guy only asks if His Imperial Majesty is currently in the main palace, after which he asks to convey that the second prince requests an audience. The maid, shocked, asks what he is talking about. Then she understands and immediately runs out of the room, obeying her master. The guy understands that the thing is that he can show himself to others if he contacts Sharabi. He spent the morning rummaging through the trash. He never had luck like he did today, although the guy had to rummage through the trash to get her hair. But then he hears screams behind the door. One of the servants asks His Highness what business he came there for, but the man just bursts into the room and screams his son's name. He says he was told that Tara had come to his senses, but what does it all mean? After all, His Highness sees two people in front of him. The boy just gets down on his knees and asks his father to order everyone to leave because he needs to say something. And the conversation will concern a girl who was unfairly locked up in prison. The emperor sits down on a chair and says that, in general, to summarize what his son just said, that girl named Sharabi came to the imperial palace solely to help him, and she is absolutely not to blame. Tara says that's exactly it. And His Highness says that he still has many questions because his son lost consciousness and can't come to his senses. So he asks who would believe the testimony the guy gave in such a state. Tara tries to say something, but His Highness the Emperor says that's enough. He claims that he doesn't think his son lied and he's not going to be happy about the guy pestering him like that. Perhaps this is the result of the unfolding of abilities that the boy had initially. His Highness says that he has understood what he wants from him and states that he will order the release of that child, Sharabi. However, it will take at least 2 or 3 days to find at least some pretext for such a decision. His Highness says he will go along with it, but Tara must keep them in mind when it's all over. Then he will have to give an explanation that will convince everyone. The Emperor asks if he understood him. The prince bows and says that he will certainly do the same. 2 days later, quite a few scientists had already gathered at the crime scene. The knights told their colleague that the crime scene examination was complete, and he could entrust the remaining work to them. And the guy replied that he would then go to the suspect. When he opened the doors to the dark basement, he began to walk up the stairs. But the blue-haired boy curses that place because every time he goes down there, it chills him to the bone. When the guy approaches the cage with the main character, he takes out the keys. The young lady looks at him and wonders what awaits her. The knight tells her to go out because this is an order from His Majesty. After a little while, the main character is already free. She is breathing a little heavily. Tara approaches the girl and asks, what about resting first and then starting to work? But the young lady only asks if she has time for this now. She says she was jailed for 2 days, so she lost all her time preparing for the festival. And yet she was paid 1,000 gold coins for this work. And His Highness the Crown Prince will also be back soon, so the young lady continues her work. The boy wants to object to something. However, the main character says that she doesn't want to hear any buts, and besides. The girl turns around and points at the other gardeners. She claims that the company keeps boring into her with its evil looks. One of the girls approaches her and asks if Miss Sharabi is really in her right mind. The main character turns around and says that it is true. The girl then points to the empty pots and asks what they are and whether the young lady wants them all fired. A couple of people pass by those pots. One of them asks if it wasn't said that there would be a parade there. The authors say that it looks like the current festival in honor of the founding of the country will be simple. The main character sighs and asks how the sparrow can understand the heron's great plan. She waves her hand and says that she shouldn't waste her energy on talking now, so she asks the gardeners not to start unnecessary quarrels. The girl screams what she said. She clenches her teeth and says that the young lady has taken on the most responsible task. So how can she behave like this? This is already driving the main character crazy, so she turns to the gardener and folds her arms across her chest. The girl gets a little scared by this and asks what the lady with pink hair is going to do. She wonders if Sharabi is going to use her amazing powers to deprive her of the ability to eat plant-based foods, and if she is thinking of kicking her out of the imperial palace. Sharabi just comes closer to her and tells her to listen carefully. She claims that the fact that Susan, or whatever her name is, can no longer eat plants, and their fruits was a decision of the spirits. As for the other thing, the gardeners will soon see with their own eyes whether she spoiled the parade or not. And maybe they will be surprised. But she does her job properly, so the girl should not meddle in something that is not her business, and should properly do what she is assigned to do. Suddenly, someone cries out asking for forgiveness, but claims to be in a hurry. The guy, all covered in plows, asks if there are 10 white oak saplings there. The main character says that, as you probably know, it is an expensive pleasure now, but he only asks how much the purchase will cost. Sharabi replies that 1 sapling will cost a gold coin, after which they make a deal. The main character counts the coins, and Tara says that the girl is really very busy and asks what kind of customer this is today. The young lady thinks that the news of her using her powers in the fire incident that happened earlier has been widely publicized. And on the eve of the festival, even though she named a high price, Today alone, more than 20 orders have already been received. The guy asks if she's going to do nothing but trade while preparing for the festival. But the main character just waves her hand and says that we also need to prepare a plan to fight the spirit. She sighs and says that she has a ton of things to do and she doesn't even know how she'll manage to do it all. Some time ago, the crown prince summoned the female lead. He asked if there was still no progress in the preparations for the festival. The girl just smiles a little puzzled because she has nothing to answer. And the guy stands up at the table and says that even though the young lady is Tara's friend, he can't trust her just because of that. The main character says that this is how the conversation with the employer went, who gave her a dressing down for nothing. But suddenly, Sharabi starts coughing, and the purple-haired boy asks if she's okay. But the main character tells him that everything is fine. Then one of the gardeners comes up to them and tells Miss Sharabi that they have finished all the preparations as she asked. They placed pots with sprouts along the entire street. Now the young lady understands that the last touch remains, so she decides to put in some strength. The girl uses her ability. She calls the plants to hear her voice and grow. The young lady tells them to open their buds for those who are waiting for it and to decorate this holiday with the shine of gold. The main character continues this ritual, and the entire street is covered with flowers. Gardeners are shocked by this and are simply speechless. People are also surprised because the flowers blossomed in the blink of an eye. But Tara is worried about Sharabi. He asks if she used up too much power. However, the main character only descends to the floor. She puts her power into one stream. And a moment later, people at the festival can see something that looks like fireworks. After this, flowers start falling all over the area. Even the gardeners are shocked by this. The main character breathes heavily and says that she did as she should have. The young lady feels a little unwell and continues to say that she did her job properly. But then she collapses to the floor because she has used up too much energy. The purple-haired boy walks towards Sharabi and screams her name. He places her head on his lap, and then he puts his hand on her forehead, after which the guy removes his hand and says in horror that the girl is all on fire. And if you think about it, she hasn't given her answer about the festival yet. The main character's eyes are swimming, and one of the knights screams that the parade is about to begin. Tara looks at the young lady with concern and tells her not to worry. He brushes her hair away and claims that he will take her to her room, so he asks her not to overexert herself and to get some good rest. That same evening, sitting by the window, they watch the fireworks together. Tara seems very happy because he can finally spend time with Sharabi. The main character also smiles sincerely and asks him how he likes the trees. The guy claims that it is very beautiful, so much so that he wants to remember this moment forever. One of the leaves falls into his hand, and the young man says that one day the festival will end and the flowers and trees will wither. He asks if Sharabi is not sad, but the young lady says that it is not like that at all. She looks out the window and says that she is glad that the spirits are happy. The young man looks at the main character and addresses her, after which he puts his hand on her shoulder and pulls the girl closer to him. Then he leans towards her, and the main character realizes what is happening. She looks at the guy and thinks that this atmosphere is a little strange, and the young man just leans towards her and kisses her forehead. This leaves the young lady in complete shock. She doesn't understand whether they are from Tara, but suddenly she wakes up in her bed. She breathes heavily and gets up. The young lady realizes that it was a dream. She sits on the bed and puts her hand on her head. But at that moment, the door to the young lady's room opens. It turns out to be a young man with purple hair. The guy asks if she is awake yet, and then puts a tray of porridge on the dresser. He puts his hand on the young lady's forehead and then says that although she has taken the medicine, her forehead is still hot. The main character asks what kind of medicine this is and why she needs it. Tara replies that she fainted due to illness and then asks if she remembers it. The guy claims that this was to be expected since she spent 2 days in a dungeon where there was clearly no heating and completely forgot about her health because of the festival. He claims that the young lady used too much magic yesterday, but Sharabi waves her hand and says that she doesn't mean that, and then asks where the guy got the medicine from. The same one claims that garden spirits like to live near medicinal plants. And then he went to see his mentor. Suddenly, the main character remembers something very important. She crumples the blanket in her hands and screams that she has completely forgotten about the festival, after which he turns to Tara and asks if it is over already. The boy replies that the festival was just great and asks if the girl is worried because she hasn't given her answer. The young lady cries out that, of course she is, because the job cost at least 1,000 gold pieces. But then the main character feels a little sick and falls face down on the bed. The first thing she sees when she opens her eyes is Tara. He turns to Sharabi and asks if she is okay. He holds the young lady so that she does not fall on the bed and claims that she should stay in bed a little longer. The main character remembers her dream, so she turns to the guy and asks if he is worried about her. The young man first asks what she is talking about, and then, blushing a little, he says that of course it is so. Well, suddenly they hear someone's voice when the main character looks out the window. Then he sees his friend there. She says that she seems to have disturbed the guys. Sharabi asks if it is Yuvlin, but the girl only turns back to the window and asks for forgiveness, and then tells them to continue, and she perhaps will go outside. These words make the main characters instantly turn red as tomatoes, and then they move away from each other a little in embarrassment. A little while later, the main character heads to the garden. Yuvlin removes his hood, and now the young lady can see her face. The shamanka says that they haven't seen Sharabi for a long time, but the main character only asks her friend if she has dyed her hair again, and then adds that it is too provocative. The girl gets a little angry from these words. She says, "What about Sharabi?" Because it seems like she never dyed hers, but she only asks the main character if her friend's hair will fall out from dyeing it so often. Evelyn just smiles and says that the main thing in this matter is good care. The girl claims that they cannot be compared to those that were before and asks if Sharabi wants to touch them. After all this, the lady with golden hair asks who the guy standing next to Sharabi is, because he doesn't look like an ordinary spirit. The main character looks at her companion and remembers that he is a prince. But she tries to come up with an excuse and says that it is some kind of spirit and this guy helps fight against amnesia. The lady with golden hair asks if it is true. Yeah, the main character says yes. There are such. Then Yuvlin sits down on the table and asks if the girl can explain why she called her so urgently. Because after the breakup, they barely even kept in touch. Tara approaches the main character and asks if the girl is more than just a friend, because she acts as if they have known each other for a long time. The lady immediately, and with her hair, says that this is indeed the case. But 5 years ago, when the girl was a little younger, she tried her best not to make a sound and hid from several people. A little while later, she came out of her hiding place and checked to see if those who were chasing her had left. The young lady was only 14 years old at the time. The little girl says that this is too much, because not only does she run away all the time, but she is also always covered in dirt. This was several months after Sharabi separated from her parents. Their home was unexpectedly raided by creditors, but when the family fled, the little girl got lost and was stuck there alone. Suddenly, someone came up to her from behind and asked if the girl was a thief. When the main character turned around, she saw a lady with black hair there. Sharabi had often met them in her world, but this was the first time she saw them here. The little girl says that she is not a thief at all, but the young lady asks why the girl is on the run then. Well then, she sighs and says that she will believe it, but then asks why they are persecuting her then. The girl says that her parents, but then falls silent and thinks why she should tell that girl the truth, because she looked very suspicious. The young lady was already counting how much she would be paid for the girl. So the little girl thought that the girl could be one of the mercenaries of those creditors. So the girl with pink hair asks if before asking questions to strangers, you shouldn't first introduce yourself. The brunette says that it is true and apologizes. She pokes the baby in the cheek and says that she is so cute. Yeah, she says it so strictly. The young lady says it seems to be getting too noisy there and claims that an interesting situation is brewing. After which the girl says that her name is Han Sujin, but then remembers that it is difficult for the locals to pronounce such a word. The main character is shocked by this. She doesn't understand whether she's imagining it or not. But the brunette only says with a smile on her face to call her Yuvlin, and then asks why the little girl is so surprised. And the main character remembers this name. She asks her to repeat her name. But the brunette just leans over to her and says that if it's really difficult, then the little girl shouldn't strain herself, because she said that they could just call her Yuvlin. Well, the girl can't believe it, because in the last 14 years, nothing like this has happened, and this name is definitely out of this world. That's why the main character claims that her name is Lee Ji-hyun. The brunette is a little shocked by what she heard, and the lady with pink hair only adds that she can call her Sharabi, and now she thinks that she can ignore her previous words. Han Soo-jin, whose middle name is Yuvlin like the main character, remembered her past life. In it, she was on Earth, in South Korea. She lived there as a 20-year-old girl, but the last thing she remembers is drinking with friends, and then, for an unknown reason, she died. Be that as it may, meeting Yuvlin became a salvation for the lady with pink hair. She talked to her while chewing bread. The little girl said that this is how her friend died while drinking beer. And the brunette answered that she was always just awful when she was drunk. Well, then she asks what about her. And the main character claims that when she was walking from a math exam, a child ran out of some building and pushed her hard. The lady with black hair just laughs and says that it looks like the girl is not very attentive. Natalie just screams who is talking. The brunette gets up and says that when you want to be reborn, then fate is usually kind to you, and it is unlikely that Sharabi's destiny is to be caught by creditors. Yuvlin claims that she thought her hair color was left over from her past life. The main character just sighs and says that this is just the way her hair is. But then he turns to the girl and says that since there is such a connection between them, maybe she will take her in, and then asks where she lives. The brunette says that she can take her in. So, albeit briefly, but thanks to her, the main character found a home. True, this shelter had a small drawback, being the headquarters of the mercenary troops of the Empire. Yuvlin opened the door and shouted to her father to see who she had brought, and then cried out that they had a guest. Now the main character remembers this? It's as if she's in another world. Tara waves her hand in front of her face and then claims that Sharabi is certainly telling a good story, but it seems like she's too lost in her dreams. The lady with golden hair says that her friend is always like this, and it was at that time that she decided to create a garden. At 14, she was even proposed to, and I think the guy's name was Matthew. Tara screams in shock. Was this a proposal? Because the girl was only 14? Evelyn Jane can't help but laugh at this. But then she tells Sharabi that since he called her, let her tell him what the matter is, because smart people don't have that much free time. The main character says that she knows, but it is an urgent matter, and in general. The main character pulls a young man with purple hair to her and says that he is a spirit, and this is only an astral shell, but his body is also alive somewhere. The lady with golden hair asks what she is talking about, and then starts looking in different directions, asking where the spirit is. But the main character only takes her hair off him, and the guy immediately disappears. The lady with golden hair asks in horror if this spirit is serious, and the main character says that she thinks that he simply lost his living body, and for some reason he cannot return to it. The girl grabs her friend by the hands and says that this is why she needs her help. But when they come to that very forest, the lady with golden hair says that it is very far away and she does not feel anything. Then the main character says that she knew it. But the girl says that however harmful the spirit may be, in the end it is impossible to harm it while at such a distance. So if Sharabi was right, then something very serious is going on. Apparently, they won't solve this problem without the intervention of someone with very great spiritual power. Then the lady with pink hair asks if this situation can be resolved at all. Yuvlina replies that she thinks so. Then Sharabi and Tara smile. But the golden-haired lady interrupts them and says that this is not an easy task, because she heard that the girl fought with that spirit. The main character says that the woman wanted to harm the person and she had to stop her, but Sharabi doesn't understand what it's all about. Then the young lady asks if her friend thought about why the spirit of this rotting tree wanted to harm people so much. The main character is a little surprised and asks why the spirit of the rotten tree would harm people, and Yuvlin answers that it is in order to get what he deeply desires. The lady with pink hair asks what the spirit living in that tree wished for. Yuvlin replies that spirits born from someone's magic tend to think like people, and the spirits that live in Sharabi's shop are similar to her in character, and they probably even think like her. This is how they differ from the true spirits of nature. Then the main character asks what's wrong with that, and the lady with golden hair answers that only spirits created by someone can desire something. People like them can cause complete chaos if they listen to this desire. And there is a high probability that in order to dispel the spell on her friend, she must give this rebellious spirit what he wants so much. Sharabi says that if that's the case, she has to talk to her. She sighs and says that in any case, there is no other way, other than going to the palace. But Yuvlin says there is another small but real problem. The main character looks at her questioningly and asks what it is. And the lady with golden hair says that she is not from this country, and will they allow her to enter the palace? Sharabi understands that this is indeed true. She turns to Tara, but he only says that it would be better if she talked to his brother herself. Even if the guy gives them his permission, he is now lying in a coma, if the girl hasn't forgotten. Then the young lady clenches her fist and turns around. She says that, as they say, you have to strike while the iron is hot. Yuvlin screams what the baby is going to do. The main character Heat turns around and says that she decided to meet with Karen Prince and get permission for Yuvlin. And so, until she returns, she asks that all the plants in the garden be thoroughly watered. Tara sighs and the golden-haired ladies are confused. But the young man only takes the watering can and gives it to Yuvlin. The girl looks at the watering can, then at Tara. And the main character at this time screams that she will pay them in full, but if they work poorly, they will be left without dinner. But when the young lady approaches the palace, she meets Glenn there. The servant says that during the festival, His Highness gave her tasks so she could freely enter and exit the palace. However, now of course, he cannot meet with anyone without prior arrangement. The main character says that she really needs it. Then Sharabi gets an idea and asks if she can get him some paper and a pen, after which the young lady begins to write a sheet. In it, she writes that she has found a person who can deal with the tree. She is a spirit caster but came from another country, more specifically from the Zelban Empire. Sharabi asks if she can enter his palace. The servant watches all this, after which the main character hands the sheet into Glam's hands and asks him to convey it to His Highness. The servant extends his hand and asks if it is urgent, since His Highness is a busy man. And the main character says that it is very urgent, and then says that she will go then because the client is waiting for her. Then Sharabi returns to her home. There she is met by Tara and Yuvlin. The girl holds a sheet of paper in her hands. The young man takes the main character's purchases and tells her to go quickly. He also asks if she went to the market. The whole package is quite weighty. The main character says that she just bought all sorts of things and then looks at Yuvlin. The lady with golden hair says that this letter is a reply from the palace. She hands it to Sharabi and says that she hasn't opened it yet. The main character reads the letter, and Yuvlin leans over to her and whispers that while the young lady was gone, she spoke with their prince. She points to Tara and says that usually a fire is driven out with a fire, so they can try sending a spirit to a spirit. That same night, they head to the palace. Glam says that as the crown prince said, it is indeed Yuvlin, the black song of the mercenaries. The main character says that this is precisely why the servant did not have to go with them. But when the lady with golden hair comes closer to the palace, she says that things are much more serious than she thought. Sharabi asks if they can definitely send the spirit there, and Yuvlin says that since he personally has no animosity towards that spirit, she thinks there won't be any problems. The girl stretches out her hand and uses the force. Drops of water begin to swirl around her hand, and at that moment, the spirit of water appears. He bows down and tells Yuvlin that they haven't seen each other for a long time. The lady with golden hair asks if the spirit remembers what she told him last time. He says yes, after which he flies away and says that he will return soon. The main character watches him go. She is a little surprised and tells her friend that they only talk about business, and it seems that she is not sending the fact that the perfume is too noisy. Yuvlin says that it did not happen right away. People with pink hair think that compared to him and the spirit of nature, they seem like wild animals because they believe in some kind of loneliness. Every time they wake up Sharabi early in the morning, screaming at the top of their lungs. However, the main character thinks that sometimes she also wants to be alone. But suddenly they notice a dark energy coming from the forest, and then the water spirit comes back. The lady with the golden hair says that it looks like Togo was just kicked out, and then asks if he got an answer. The spirit says that he, of course, found out what she wants. He looks at the main character, and she asks what the spirit said. The spirit thinks that this is an absolutely insane demand, but maybe these girls will cope. Therefore, the spirit of water says that what she so desires to be called the love of the creator is a feeling that is shared by the magician and the spirit he created. The brunette claimed that this is what she wants so much that she is ready to die. The main character puts her hand to her forehead and says how selfish she is. Yuvlin asks if there is such a guy who will share this feeling with her. Yeah, the lady with pink hair says that this is the problem. She asks what if her creator has already died and she will really need to find a necromancer. And so all this rot consumed the tree because its owner did not give it enough love. Sharabi says that as she thought, she will still have to go to Tara's room and see the spirit. Glam just nods and says that they already have permission so they can do whatever they deem necessary. Sharabi resolutely steps forward. She understands that she must convince that spirit. After this, she enters the room with Tara's body and opens the curtains. When the young lady goes out onto the balcony, she sees that same woman sitting on a tree. She sighs and turns to her. The brunette is shocked and immediately approaches Sharabi, and then he asks what's going on, and also whether she wanted to die by her hand. But the lady with pink hair only says that she found out what the spirit wants, and then claims that she can try to find this person. Well, maybe the woman will give her at least some information. But the spirit of the rotten tree only screams at her not to laugh at her. And then he asks if the girl wants to destroy her so much that she will go looking for a man about whom she knows absolutely nothing. She looks at the lying prince and says that if she dies, her friend will wake up. Sharabi says that she is right, even too right, because she doesn't care what to do with the woman, cleanse her or finish her off so that Tara can live on. However, to be honest, she always has the opportunity to destroy a woman against her will. Few people know about forced extermination, except perhaps those people who are connected to the spirit world. A person who wants to destroy a certain spirit will be able to do so by spending half of his strength. It is believed that this part of his magic will be lost forever, and he will be weakened by half. Although there is a chance that the power will return. However, until now, all attempts to find a way to restore them have burst like soap bubbles. Therefore, most spirit conjurers do not even think about performing this ritual of extermination and think about it only in extreme cases, when it comes to the question of life and death. So the young lady asks if she wants this spirit of rotten wood, because if so, then there is only one option that will suit everyone, because the spirit is sick. The woman clenches her fists hearing this. Sharabi says that she doesn't know why she wants to feel love like the one her creator could give her, but she wants to find out. The brunette asks if she really wants it, and the main character nods. Then the woman extends her hand to her. Tara and Jovelyn are excited about their friend, but the woman with black hair only envelops her in dark energy and says that she will tell her about it. And if the girl really wants to end everything in a way that would be better for both of them, then let him follow her. The main character is enveloped in this dark energy, and after a little while, everything goes dark before her eyes. After this, the young lady wakes up on the balcony of that very palace. She realizes that it seems she did not die. And then she hears sounds from behind, so the girl heads into the corridor. As she walks down the stairs, she thinks it looks like the building where Tara is. Only everything looks a little different there. Then the girl sees energy coming from the doors, so she heads into the garden. There, she sees a young man with brown hair. He greets the guest of the garden. And then when he leaves, he puts his hand to the tree and uses his power. The main character watches this from behind the door. She looks at that tree and realizes that it is that very rotten tree. The girl thinks that it was once so beautiful and asks how so. But she immediately comes to the realization that her voice is heard in this world. The young man turns around and then goes to the door. When he enters the building, he sees the main character there. The guy is surprised and asks if it is a spirit, and the main character understands that he just called her a spirit. The girl wonders if he knows her, but the brown-haired man only admires. He examines the young lady from all sides and says that this is the pink-haired spirit. He asks what flower she came from or if she is a free spirit of nature. The main character thinks that, by the way, this guy is very noisy. The young man turns around and sighs, saying that he definitely didn't create someone like her. Sharabi understands that the guy is fine without her answers. He turns around and says that he thinks she doesn't have any special abilities. After which he gets down on one knee and turns to the heavens. The guy says that the day has come when he met the spirit of nature. The main character relaxes a little and asks if he is a spirit caster. The young man says that she guessed correctly, also claiming that he is the court sorcerer and his name is Caliph. The guy shakes her hand and says it's nice to meet her, but the main character's gaze falls on something else. She sees a tree with pink petals there. The young man says that the girl is probably a tree spirit, not a flower spirit. He approaches the rose tree and says that he hasn't seen it bloom for a long time. He also claims that the lady with pink hair looks very much like a blooming bud. The main character doesn't understand what the hell is going on because in this world there were no Korean cherries until she created them. And besides, Caliph. This is the name of a spellcaster who lived several centuries ago. He was very famous among his colleagues. The guy even wrote his own autobiography to share his knowledge with others, especially with those like her. Spellcasters who can understand the spirits of plants. Apart from this book, there is practically no information left about him. The main character turns to him and says that she has a question. The guy claims that it looks like she was just born and is interested in a lot of things, but he asks what the girl would like to know. The young lady claims that he said he didn't create her and therefore assumed that she was unlikely to have any special power. So she asks what that means. The guy approaches the tree and claims that he has been taking care of it lately. After this, his spirit appears from the tree. The main character understands that this is the same woman from the rotten tree, and the guy says that the spirit living in him has two abilities at once. The first is the gift of showing what she herself has seen, and the second is to allow another person to personally experience the events of her life. Sharabi realizes that she can also grow trees. However, spirits have never had any special abilities before. Her two abilities are quite similar, but they are different at their core. It turns out that the main character was able to get there thanks to her powers. She is pulled out of her thoughts by Caliph's voice. The guy claims that he will go and return tomorrow. He also says that then they can all have fun together and says goodbye. After this, Sharabi and the woman made of wood are left alone. The lady with green hair addresses the main character. She says that the caliph said that the girl was recently born. The main character remembers that moment and realizes that the woman heard their conversation. And the spirit of the tree only continues and says that if she suddenly wants to ask something, who can contact her at any time, because now it is spring. So she never sleeps. The lady with green hair looks at the tracks and says that the caliph also promised to come every day. The main character leans against a tree and yawns. She thinks that she also wants to sleep. Looking at the world through the eyes of spirits, she realizes some things. They cannot go far from their tree, and their time flows incomparably faster than human time. But all they can do is simply stay in place until someone calls them. When spring comes, the main character wakes up. She stretches out from sleep, but when she turns around, she sees that same lady behind her. She looks very upset. The woman says that caliph still doesn't come. The main character asks how long he has been gone and thinks how much time has passed. The green-haired woman asks what she's talking about and whether the girl wasn't waiting for him. The main character says that it was winter and she was sleeping all the time. But the woman just grabs her hands and asks how this is even possible, because she is the spirit of nature. But suddenly a person approaches them from behind. The woman with green hair turns around, and when she sees him, she immediately smiles, joyfully shouting the name Caliph, and then immediately runs to him and hugs him. The guy apologizes because he said he promised to visit them more often. The tree spirit says that everything is fine because he will come more often from now on. The girl asks if this is true. The main character, looking at him in shock, understands that from the side of the spirit, who has lived for hundreds of years, people die too early. The caliph says he is there today to give them one last gift. The main character, horrified, understands what he is talking about and comes a little closer. And the man uses his powers and various plants immediately sprout in the garden, after which the guy falls down lifeless. The woman with green hair cannot hold back her tears. She cries in despair because Caliph was the most important person in her life. The main character understands her pain, but even after that, time continued to pass. Unlike other spirits in nature, the one created by the Caliph could not fully accept his death. When two guys were walking in the garden, they noticed a black tree. One of them asked if it was a tree of anger. He came closer to it and said that he would not be able to bring it back to life, and perhaps insects had started up in it and eaten it from the inside. The guy asks if it wouldn't be better to just cut it down without waiting for spring. The other guy agrees with him, but notices something strange. He tells his friend that his hand has turned black. The blonde does not understand at first what his colleague is talking about, but then he turns and puts his eyes on his hand. But while he's doing this, the spirit of the rotten tree appears behind him. The boys are scared by this and immediately start running away, but their attempts are in vain. All efforts to get rid of this tree were unsuccessful. Be it fire or poison, this was the case with every capable person's attempts. The spirit of the rotten tree realized that no one understood how she felt about losing her master. Even those brats he raised just forgot about him. The girl wonders if this is even possible here and how after losing the owner, one can continue to live as if nothing happened. But one day she felt someone walking in the garden. She turned around to look, and it turned out to be Prince Terra. The guy was walking through the forest with his servants. The young man claimed that he wanted this palace because he liked the local garden. Clem turns to His Highness and says that it is quite dangerous there. But the prince does not listen to him and says that the trees in this garden are familiar to him, and they are similar to those that were in the mansion where he and his brother lived for some time. After which the main character watches as the guy enters his new palace. The spirit of the rotten tree says that the girl has also lived there for quite a long time. The woman comes down from the tree. She says she doesn't want to be there anymore, sacrificing someone. She says that the lady with pink hair, other plants around her, and other people are suffering from her. The woman says that if the girl is also a spirit that has existed for several centuries, then she asks if she can finish her off before she becomes even more annoying. The main character asks what she is talking about. The woman says that she is forcing her to do this because it will reflect badly on her. But people will continue to try to get rid of her, so in any case, the woman will not be able to hold out for long. The spirit of the rotten tree says that if they all fail or give up, then nothing will work out. The main character looks at the woman. Now she understands why she failed to commit suicide. After all, this is all because Tara is not one of those who will thoughtlessly cut down a tree just because it is ugly. The boy kept growing, but this spirit's wish for death was not fulfilled and her time was wasted. The main character watching the guy says that he has grown a lot, and the brunette says that the girl will soon die. The main character asks what she is talking about, but the spirit of the rotten tree tells her to look at her hands. When the young lady looks at them, she sees that they are slowly starting to disappear. But suddenly she hears someone heading towards the garden. The servant asks where His Majesty is going, and the guy claims that he will take a short walk and will be back soon. Then the woman says that that boy, if they call him a prince, then he has some significance for the people. She claims that then people will want to get rid of her without any problems, even if it means sacrificing only them. The woman says that it seems that the girl also has little time left, and instead of being left alone, even without a relative ready to finish you off, she will. It would be better to take his soul now and leave. So the woman immediately heads to their rotten tree. She emits a little dark energy. The prince, feeling it, thinks where this sweet smell comes from. The lady with pink hair shouts at him to stop and cries out that she can really touch his soul so easily. But the woman says that no matter what, people must face danger, and the young man has always been on guard, so it is best to finish him off now. The woman is already directing her forces at him, but the main character stands between them, which causes her to be wounded by these dark forces. The woman is shocked by this, and Sharabi only turns to the prince and sees that Togo's hand has already turned black. She immediately shakes him and screams for Tara to come to his senses. She asks if he wanted to die, but then says that if he really is no longer alive, then let him come to his senses quickly. The young man looks at his hand and asks what is happening. The main character continues to scream and tells him to quickly get out of this body and go to her. The guy is shocked at first, but still does as she says. Soon the servants run up to His Highness the Prince. The main character grabs the lady with black hair. She cries out to the prince about the Sharabi flower garden. The girl begins to dissolve and tells him to be sure to remember about Sharabi's flower garden. After this, the young lady wakes up on the couch. She gets up and looks at where she is now, but the first thing she sees is His Highness the Crown Prince. The guy asks if she's awake, and then he says that the girl manages to sleep even in such cold weather. He claims that he wanted to take her to the bedroom, but there were too many people who could notice. The main character shakes off her dress and says that it's okay. Apparently, because the sofa is made of good material, her lower back doesn't hurt. She smiles and says that it seems like it's better than the bed in her house. After which the girl heads to the door and the prince asks if she is leaving already. And if so, when will she come again? The main character turns around and says that she needs to find out something, but nevertheless she will drop in to see him within the week. The guy with ruby hair asks if she will come over with that girl. He then raises his hand to call the servant. Glam comes and tells His Highness that he is listening. The Crown Prince tells him to act according to the situation and at the same time assign a knight to the young lady to accompany her to the appointed place. The servant says that it will be done. After this, when the young lady walks down the corridor, she sees a familiar knight there. He greets Milady with a smile, after which he leads her to her shop. The main character thanks Togo for accompanying him and wishes him a safe journey. The golden-haired lady asks who that guy is, and Sharabi replies that he is a knight they are slightly familiar with. But the main character claims that this is not the case, because when she entered, she noticed an extremely unpleasant man standing in front of the door, so she asks who it is. The lady with golden hair turns around and says that it was quiet there for a while the Imperial Knight was here. But it seems that the man came to Sharabi. The main character asks if it is her, and Yuvlin answers that yes, and it is most likely a client of the flower garden. The main character says that the garden is now. But before she can finish speaking, she hears someone banging on the door. The man knocks with all his might and screams for the girl to quickly open the door. He screams that he knows perfectly well that there is someone there. And then she shouts that the client is waiting outside and she has the nerve to pretend that she doesn't know anything, after which he loses his temper and kicks down the door. The main character is shocked by this. She realizes that the freak broke the door, after which she immediately opens the door and asks what he allows himself to do. The guy screams that no matter how much he called, no one bothered to answer. Sharabi is also furious. She says that there must have been an announcement that they were temporarily closed and not working. She says that you can't just barge in like that, but the man just laughs and says, doesn't he know that her client is the king himself? The main character thinks how impudent he is. She says that, however, in her store she is the queen. The girl looks at his patch and says that because he thoughtlessly broke into a closed store, it can be considered an attempted robbery. And the fact that he broke the door is also an encroachment on private property. Besides, the guy is not a regular customer. She asks if he is an employee of Count Pripania. Sharabi asks if he could guess that there is a separate way to contact noble families with whom trade is regularly conducted. The man doesn't know what to answer to this, and the main character says that no matter how noble the family is, if they enter in this way, then there can be no talk of any offer of cooperation. The girl turns around and says that she will tell the butler about today's incident so that he should be more careful in the future. People start whispering. One of them says that the similar cost of the damaged door will be charged to that family. The girl closes the door and says that the garden will reopen next week, so even if they are in a hurry, she would appreciate it if they came at that time. The lady with pink hair says that she needs to get this all sorted out quickly and get the business back to normal. She sits down on the table and says that annoying authorities and spies are showing up there. The lady with golden hair asks, "What spies are we talking about?" Sharabi looks at her and remembers something about it. A little while ago in the royal palace, she met a knight with purple hair, and he greeted my lady. The main character happily says that they haven't seen each other for a long time, and then she apologizes for that incident at the festival. The knight places his hand on her head and says that everything is fine, because he was told that the young lady had fainted. He offers to talk to the main character on the way, because he must protect her, and he also just wants to ask her about something. On the way, the young lady asks what he wanted to ask her, and the guy thinks for a bit. And then he asks if the young lady were offered to go to another country. What would she do? Sharabi asks if he's talking about spies, and then asks which country exactly. The guy says that this is the quality of his assumption. But for example, what about the Virabee's empire? The lady with pink hair notes that he is speaking too specifically. But the young man claims that he was merely setting an example, since Milady is very talented. Now the main character is sitting in her chair and saying that it was just one thing. She says she hasn't opened a store for a long time, so that man isn't the only one who's unhappy about it. The lady with the golden hair says the point is that this is not the last flower garden in the area. People who are going to outsource the work have already found a suitable gardener. Those who will be waiting for the store to open are probably hoping that she will be able to somehow handle their errands. The main character opens the door and decides to end it as quickly as possible. When she enters the garden, she is immediately met by fairies. They ask Sharabi if something happened. The main character simply turns to them and asks if they are by any chance suffering from a lack of love. But the fairies only ask what it is. The lady with pink hair thinks how to explain it. She asks the fairies if they know the rotten tree that is in the imperial palace. She says that she means the doha of that tree. After that, the main character explains the whole situation. The fairies say that she should have explained it step by step from the very beginning, because how would they know when a girl suddenly talks about some kind of lack of love? But the girl just screams that even if she explains it in dog language, they still won't understand. But the fairy only looks at each other and thinks what dog-like means. The main character puts her hand on her forehead and decides to just keep quiet. But one of them says that one way or another, perhaps her guess about the lack of love is correct. The girl said that the spirit that was born in the hands of the caliph has 2 abilities. If that's the case, then he probably wanted more attention than others. If it is a spirit born in the hands of a person, then the stronger it is, the deeper its connection with the elemental. However, for this spirit, human life is too short. Therefore, even after the death of the owner, he will not be able to come to terms with this. Maybe it was because she wondered if she would find him again if the guy was destined to be born again. Then Sharabi asks what she should do, but the fairy with a serious expression tells her to get rid of her. After all, the girl said that such a powerful spirit needs love so much that he is ready to kill himself. If she takes part in this, the lady with pink hair may also die. The main character becomes a little depressed and says that she also wants to leave. But there are reasons why it is impossible. Besides, she can't leave her because the woman is very similar to them. The fairies are shocked by this. The main character told her to stop, but even these little spirits that are in flower pots know what the spirit of a rotten tree has to endure, because they had exactly the same heart to care for the master who woke them up and raised them. The fairy says that Sharabi can leave on her own. The main character understands what she means, and the fairy claims that she did say that a woman wants to be loved by someone who has similar energy to the person who created and raised her. In that case, wasn't it about the love of the caliph himself? After all, Sharabi has an energy that is similar to the energy of the caliph. The main character looks at her hands and asks if this is possible with her power. She tells the fairies a little sadly not to be like that, because they can't be like the spirit of the rotten tree, even if she disappears later. The fairy just sighs, flies closer to the main character's ear, and whispers something there. This makes the young lady smile sincerely. And later that night, she and Yevlin go to that garden. The crown prince says that, as the girl said, all the exits from the imperial palace are locked and the people from the palace also have all their servants left, except for the most necessary. The ruby-haired guy asks if she can handle it. And Sharabi says she'll try until she can, And then she says she can't and says she'll handle it no matter what. She slaps her cheeks and says that she's off then. The water spirit watches from above. He uses his powers and disperses the dark energy. Yuvlin tells the main character to run immediately if she senses danger, and let her not think of being a hero in vain. The lady with pink hair smiles and says that she did not intend to. The girl asks if she is not one of those who only does good for others. Then she looks forward and thinks that she will be okay because she promised Tara that she would definitely come back. Suddenly, a lady with black hair appears. She says that since the girl returned there again, Tony really wants to say that she found what she so badly desires. The young lady says that she is a bit of a genius herself, so she does not forget what she was once told. However, she says that if a woman wants to get what she wants, she could tone down the energy that comes from her a little. Although the woman looks unperturbed, in reality, she can barely restrain herself from snatching what she wants. The woman waves her hand, and the energy dissipates. Then the main character sighs and comes closer to the tree. The girl understands that if this was the only solution from the very beginning, then she must clarify this. So she spreads her arms out to the sides and tells the spirit of the rotten tree to come to her. The woman is a little shocked by this and asks what the girl is going to do. But the main character uses her powers and says that the woman wants it. Although it is not clear what was the cause and what was the effect, but part of this power came from him. The last moments of Caliph. The energy of life. If the girl loved her master so much, she would be able to recognize him. A small cloud of energy flies up to the woman with black hair, and when she touches it, her hand gets rid of the black mark. The spirit of the rotten tree asks Caliph if this is it. Her legs immediately begin to move, and then the woman runs up and hugs the main character. She still has black energy, which is a little bit harmful to the main character. The brunette cries and says that she missed Caliph very much. The main character apologizes. She says that she is not the Caliph because, unfortunately, the dead do not return. The main character says that even knowing this, the woman could not cope with her loneliness. The empty palace and the gardeners who left this place. Since then, no one has returned. The woman is a tree planted for the delight of the eyes, and she must have wanted people to look at her when she was blooming beautifully. The girl tried her best to grow very beautiful flowers that smelled delicious. She told everyone to come and see them and take a walk, but no one was there. No one heard her call. The lady with green hair asked for someone to come. She flew up into the sky, and when she did this, she saw the maid. The spirit of the tree was shouting at her to come over, but the girl did not hear it. Then the tree spirit used some wind, but the maid only asked what was going on with the weather and ran away. The green-haired lady understood that ordinary people could not hear her voice, but the Caliph was special, and now she was left completely alone. That was when despair settled in her. Now the woman is shedding her black tears, and the spirit of water is trying with all his might to drive away the dark energy. The main character hugs the woman and thinks that this really has no limit. The girl thought that it would be hard, but she does not understand how long it will last. The spirit of the rotten tree says that just a little bit more. And the main character wonders what she is talking about. But then he sees that the young lady's hair is starting to return to normal. After that, she says with a smile on her face that they should have met earlier. The main character says that if the girl is destined to be reborn, she hopes that the spirit of the tree will then grow in love. The young lady knows that there is no other life for beings like spirits, but she could not say anything else. Sharabi thinks that if you don't count her origin, then her life is too much. The young lady says that it is time for them to go now, as the woman with green hair has been there too long. The tree spirit thanks the main character with a sincere smile and then disappears forever. After this, Yuvlin approaches the young lady. She says that it wasn't that difficult, and then asks if Sharabi is okay. But the girl just falls to the floor. The lady with golden hair screams her name, but everything swims before the main character's eyes. A few years ago, when Sharabi was working in a mercenary unit with Yuvlin, it was then that the decision was made to become a gardener and open a flower shop. But in those days, another important event happened. The main character was trying to cut one of the branches of a bush. She put all her strength into it, but this only caused the scissors to break. The main character was shocked by this. She didn't understand what to do with it and whether it could be fixed. But after a little while, she had been standing in the middle of the square for more than an hour. The young lady wondered where she was at all. It seems to her that last time she saw a forge on the right side of the road. But now there is no one at all in that place. The girl thinks that she has been walking the streets for so long that she no longer remembers the way back. So the young lady found herself in a foreign land. She understands that only she could get lost in the woods. But suddenly, someone puts a hand on the girl's shoulder, and this frightens the little girl. However, when she turns around, she sees a young man with brown hair there. He apologizes to the baby and says that she must have been scared. The guy asks if she is okay. He claims that he simply saw that the girl continued to stand in one place and asked if she was lost. He says that the little girl is also carrying around such huge scissors, so he asks if it's too heavy for her and then offers his help. The main character says that it's not hard for her at all, and the guy just smiles. After this, the girl finally decides to ask if he knows where the forge is. Then the guy takes her to the building where the blacksmiths work. The girl looks around, and when they come in, one old blacksmith asks what happened to Matthew there and whether he broke his ball again. But the young man says that it is not so at all. He puts the main character ahead of himself and claims that today this girl was desperately wandering along the road, so he brought her from there because she has some business to attend to. The man approaches her and asks the little girl why the forge. The main character is a little embarrassed, and then she shows the blacksmith the broken scissors. Matthew watches her from behind. That was their first meeting. A little while later, the main character only tells Matthew to bring her some water. The guy pours water into a glass and hands it to Sharabi. When the main character drinks it, she finally feels alive. The young man says that she is also having a hard time and asks if it would not be better to earn some money and pay off all the debts as soon as possible, rather than suffer while in this situation. Sharabi says that it would be fine if this debt amounted to a few pennies, but the amount exceeds 6,000 gold, so the young lady does not understand how she can implement all this. But the guy only says that if he were with her, he would be able to do it, because the once ruined garden sparkled with new colors in just 2 months thanks to her. The young man claims that his girlfriend will definitely be able to become a world-famous gardener. The girl says that the boy will definitely get stung by a bee someday, and the boy only asks if it is a curse. But Sharabi replies that he speaks as if his teeth are smeared with honey. The boy just giggles and then picks one purple flower and puts it behind the ear of the lady with pink hair. He also asks how old the girl is. The main character realizes that they have known each other for 2 months, but she still hasn't told him her age. The girl claims that she is 14 and asks why the guy is interested in this. The young man, all red, says that he likes her, but she is still too young. The main character is shocked by this. She blushes and asks what he is talking about and whether he was joking. She then tries to catch up with him and asks him to say that he is joking, but the guy only says that who knows whether he is joking or not. This was Sharabi's first memory of someone sincerely confessing their feelings to her. Although only childhood memories are associated with him, the young lady clearly remembers how they quarreled. She remembers how a guy asked her to marry him when she grew up. There were no ways to earn money back then, and a debt of 6,000 gold lay on her shoulders like a huge boulder, so she couldn't even think about accepting someone's feelings. Now the girl thinks whether she would have answered differently if she had known that she would be able to pay off the entire debt and save money. Yuvlin can stand next to her and point to his open mouth, and the main character feeds her cake. When the lady with golden hair enjoys it, he asks what the girl is thinking about. The main character says that it was nothing like that, and she just remembered the past. Yuvlin just laughs and asks what she remembered and if she was really thinking about Matthew. Sharabi blushes and says that of course not. Tara is interested in this and asks who Matthew is. The golden-haired lady asks Tara if he knew that Matthew was their Sharabi's first love. The main character at that moment screams that everything is wrong, and the guy was unrequitedly in love with her. Yuvlin asks if the two of them didn't spend too much time with each other, although they were working at that moment. Tara just turns around and says that it is true. At that moment, one thought appeared in the main character's head. Looking at Tara's profile, she wondered if there was anyone she could like right now. But the girl immediately grabs her fork and pierces the entire piece of cake, then mercilessly eats it. After which, the girl claims that this relationship is in the past. And even if Matthew confesses again, she has no intention of reciprocating his feelings. Yuvlin just smirks and asks if it's true. That same evening, the main character lies on the ground and looks at the stars. But suddenly, something blocks her view. It turns out to be Tara. The guy claims that the girl will catch a cold if she lies on the floor, but the main character says that she has quite a strong immune system. At that time, she worked too much, so everything turned out like this. After that, the main character says that tomorrow the guy will finally be able to return to his body. Tara says that this is really so. Then Sharabi tells him to visit her from time to time, because he will no longer see the spirit with his own eyes, but the guy doesn't let the lady with pink hair finish speaking. He lies down next to her on the grass. And then he claims that he came to look at her. The young man says that there is so much he would like to tell her, and he hasn't even really told her his story. The main character asks if he talks about how he lived as a prince. The young man says that her perception may differ from reality, but she and her brother have been considered outcasts since an early age. The guy asks the girl if she remembers the burnt-out mansion they went to on the day of their first meeting, but that's where she and her brother spent their childhood. The main character is a little shocked by this. And after that, Tara continued the story about his childhood. He told a story that he had not touched on before about how he almost drank poison, and then about how I almost stabbed him with a mercenary dagger, and then how he lived day after day receiving dozens of threats. Even when he was summoned to the palace, he was unable to utter a word due to the growing fear of seeing his father occupying the imperial throne. The guy was a pathetic person who always lived under someone's protection, without an ounce of courage. So he lived until that very moment when he touched that rotten tree. Then the young man had a dream. He did not really see Sharabi's face, but he immediately went out and went to Sharabi's flower garden. If the guy hadn't met her that day, then most likely the end would have overtaken him. Looking back, the young man realizes that he has experienced enough difficulties. But what if he had to go through all of this to eventually meet Sharabi? The guy says he thinks that theory is valid. He turns to Sharabi and then extends his hand to her. The lady with pink takes his hand, and the guy claims that he really wants to, that the day has come when he could meet her not in this state, but as a living person, to tell about her true feelings. The main character understands that she will definitely cope because she made a promise to Tara. Now, the main character thinks that since that woman was a tree spirit and the main character was a gardener, then this separation was apparently destined to happen. The girl lies there, exhausted, wondering if the spirit of the tree has found freedom. But when she opens her eyes, she also thinks that her stomach hurts. Someone hands her a glass of water. The main character is about to say thank you, but then she sees that it is His Highness the Crown Prince and says that she thanks him. The young man with ruby eyes says that for nothing and that he should be grateful. He holds out his hand and asks the girl if she would like a drink, and she says she will, and immediately drinks a full glass. Then the Crown Prince says that the tree has completely dried up. The main character says that all this is because the spirit left him, and most likely flowers will never bloom, and leaves will never appear on that tree again. Sharabi crumples the glass in her hands and asks if they will cut down that tree. His Highness says he doesn't know, because if it doesn't cause any more trouble, it doesn't matter to him whether it's cut down or left. Besides, he's not the owner of this palace, and Tara will decide what to do with it. Then the main character remembers something important. She asks how long she lay unconscious and how Tara is. The guy with ruby hair only says that he sent a doctor to him, and if you think about it, then it's time to slowly come to his senses. He asks if they should go and visit him while the young man lies in his chambers, but suddenly he begins to come to consciousness. The guy understands that he has apparently already completely returned to his body. He has not felt this pain for a long time, but when he looks forward, he sees that during the time he was lying there, his bangs have noticeably grown, and then he remembers that Sharabi had insistently ordered him not to go inside. That's why he was outside the Imperial Palace, but a little while later he noticed a flash of green energy. He didn't return immediately after that. The young man tries to get out of bed and go to Sharabi, but then he falls down. At that moment, he hears someone heading down the corridor. It turns out to be the Crown Prince. The guy is holding Sharabi in his arms. After which, he sits her down on a chair and asks if the girl hasn't been using her powers for 2 months. So he suggests that she sit down, since it is likely that she will get dizzy. Tara feels a little awkward and sits back down on the bed. The ruby-haired boy says that they are both very tired, so they shouldn't chat for too long. Then the Crown Prince turns around and says that he is leaving. Tara and Sharabi are a little embarrassed since they are now alone. The guy looks at the main character's trembling hands and immediately lowers his head, feeling guilty about it. But the young lady only calls out to him and says that she is not actually dead yet, but is full of strength and energy. So she asks if he can stop worrying so much already. The guy says that it seems that Sharabi's condition leaves much to be desired. The young lady asks why, but the guy asks if the energy of a person with such abilities can decrease so absurdly, because now he sees that the main character exudes the slightest bit of this energy. But the young lady says it's temporary, and hasn't the guy noticed that it happens every time she loses consciousness? The young man, Genya, blushes a lot and says that he apparently tormented her a lot, but the main character does not look offended. She just puts her hands on his cheeks and says that it is nevertheless good that he has returned. The boy agrees to this, and the young lady continues and says that she also benefited from it. After all, if this had not happened, then perhaps she would have lived her whole life in ignorance of that which troubles the soul of the spirit she created. That's why she tells us with a bright smile on her face that everything is okay. Tara looks at her a little red-faced. The main character just yawns. She spent so much energy that her body is weak and sleep takes its toll. It was then that Tara decided that next time he would definitely protect this girl. And so, about a month later, he visited Sharabi's garden again. A lot of time has passed since Tara's awakening, and the main character, whose powers were exhausted beyond all reason, did nothing but sleep. The work in the store lasted for as long as 15 days, so after it was finished, it could be opened again. The main character opens the door to her shop and tells customers to line up because only 10 people can place an order today. One of the guys asks how this is possible, since he's been standing there for 3 hours already. But the young lady says she can't offer more because of the situation in the Imperial Palace. Asama thinks it's appropriate or send the guests away because of the preparations that are taking place in the palace. Then the guy asks her to at least give her a number, but the young lady just tells him to come back today because she will remember everyone who waited for their turn. And then someone points out that people from the palace have arrived. The crowd is a little disappointed but disperses, and the main character can finally breathe a sigh of relief. After that, Tara approaches her. Then the two of them head to the shop. The main character serves the prince tea and counts the plants herself. The order received from the imperial family was to grow plants on site to hold a celebration in honor of Tara's recovery. The young lady counts 14 plants and realizes that she is finally finished, but then she turns to the guy and asks if something happened. She claims that he arrived in a sparkling carriage and was also born in beautiful clothes. The young man chuckles, and then hands the main character 2 envelopes. Sharabi asks what it is, and the young lady replies that it is an invitation to a celebration. The young lady says that quite a few common people pay to have fun at the celebration of aristocrats. She claims that she is a participant in a celebration of aristocrats, and therefore can disappear without the mice and birds knowing. But the prince tells her not to worry so much because it will be a masquerade ball. The guy says that the ailing emperor wants to see her, and instead of calling her personally, he used this method. He claims that the appearance of the eyes plays a big role, and if a young lady joins the celebration, it will be difficult to tell who is talking to whom. The young lady looks at the paper and realizes that it is an invitation from the emperor himself. From the very beginning, she had no choice but to accept the invitation. A masquerade ball is, in other words, a celebration where wearing masks is allowed. When taking part in such an event, most aristocrats would never even think that an ordinary Sharabi, a girl from the people, was wandering around them. The pink-haired lady understands that this is obviously Tara's point of view, since she and the emperor have nothing in common. Therefore, if a girl comes to the palace and receives condemnation from people before him, it will no longer concern him. The guy sighs and tells the main character to take into account that this is an imperial order. The main character says that she obeys and addresses the guy as His Highness. The young man smiles and says that he doesn't like to hear such words from anyone but from her. Then the girl puts the sheet closer to his face and tells him to go back to work in their store. When he is absent, there are not enough workers. The young lady thinks that the word masquerade ball suits aristocratic girls very well. The girl imagines aristocrats conversing with each other and wonders if this is always the case. Beautiful clothes, drinking alcohol, and dancing. The young lady remembers her childhood, and you realize that if you think about it, since she was born, she has never indulged in fun. Sharabi calls out to Yuvlin from behind. She greets her and then says that the prince has also come to see her. The girl points to an envelope in the hands of the lady with pink hair and asks what she has. And the main character says that she are invited to the Imperial Palace. After all, there will be a masquerade ball. Zero goes with golden hair and immediately snatches the sheet from his friend's hands, not letting her finish. She asks if she was invited too. The girl claims that the name Yuvlin is also present, and the prince is a little surprised by the girl's reaction. The lady with golden hair just turns around and asks if they have decided who they will transform into. But these two just shake their heads. Then Yuvlin says that in that case, they can leave it to her. The main character does not understand what she is talking about, and the girl only claims that she can make an excellent suit for her, even if you wouldn't say so. And for His Highness, too. The guy claims that there are only 15 days left and asks if the girl will have time to sew 3 suits and even one for him. The lady with the golden hair says that half a month is quite enough. She runs away from the nightingale and says that she needs to start quickly. The main character doesn't understand why the girl is so excited, and then she turns around and asks the prince if it's hard for him to be there for a long time. The purple-haired boy says that no matter what, he will come again. Then he blushes a little and fidgets with his fingers, apparently thinking of something but can't decide. However, suddenly the guy gets up from his seat and kisses the main character on the cheek. The young lady blushes like a tomato because it took her by surprise. The boy leaves the shop and waves to Sharabi. That same day, a little while later, the main character goes out into the garden to water the flowers, but all she does is spill water on the path. The girl apparently is thinking about something. The main character thinks about Tara and that kiss on the cheek, and also about how he said that he would come again because on the day of the ball they would send a carriage. The young lady is still standing there like a vegetable. The swindler is whispering behind her. One of them asks the other if she finds their mistress a bit thoughtful. Not long ago she worked tirelessly, but now she just stands there in a daze. Another fairy says that the girl started acting pretty weird when that purple-haired guy came back. They look at the main character and ask if she shouldn't bring him again. But the second fairy says that she heard that the guy is a principal, and if only they could do whatever their hearts desire. The lady with pink hair turns to the fairies, who respond and think about what the girl wants to ask them. But the main character, just a little blushing, asks if she should go to the imperial palace as a worker. The fairies are horrified by this and ask if she is lying, because if everything were as before, could anyone say something like that? The fairies understand that if everything were as usual, Sharabi would never have such thoughts, because she so fiercely refused to become the imperial gardener. The main character, after some thought, lies down face down on the table. She claims that as she thought, it is not so. The girl understands that the absence of just one person makes her think about such things. The young lady thinks how complicated everything is. She doesn't know what this feeling is, but everything seems so complicated. At this time, a third fairy flies up to them. She asks what's the matter, and the other two fairies look at each other. At this time, the prince is in his office talking to a servant. The guy says that in that case, he will raise this issue on the agenda. And then he bows and says that His Highness has done an excellent job. After that servant leaves, the young man rises from his chair and goes to the window, after which he goes out onto the balcony and looks at the dried-up tree. The guy doesn't realize that a whole month has already passed. A lot has happened during this time, so he now understands why people are screaming about moving the prince's palace. Glam was especially persistent, so much so that he even managed to convince the emperor. However, when the guy looks at that garden, thoughts about that girl involuntarily creep into his head. Tara wonders if he would be selfish if he said he wanted to continue being there. Suddenly, he sees a pink ray of light and thinks that even now, everything is exactly like that day when he was next to her. The fairy flies up to the guy and tries to reach him, but he thinks that it is a spirit that cannot be seen. But then he realizes that he sees a spirit and is immediately surprised. The guy rubs his eyes and says that he thinks something is wrong with his eyes. Give him the ability he is not using now. The young man asks why he sees a fairy, but the little girl only gets angry. She says that what is visible and asks why he does not trust his own eyes. After that, she pulls him by the suit and tells him to talk to her. Tara realizes that it looks like a spirit from Sharabi's flower garden. She not only looks like a hostess, but also has the same character. The guy asks if something happened. The little girl just gets angry and says if he asks. She then starts pulling Togo's hair and screams why he doesn't appear in the garden, because now he doesn't look like he has any pain. The boy just puts his hand on his head, and then the realization comes to him, and he asks if Sharabi sent a fairy all the way there. He also asks if the little girl got there all by herself. The fairy says that he is thinking correctly, because after he left, Sharabi's condition became terribly strange, so she came to find out. But the young man only asks what this strange state means, and the fairy answers that it means something. After all, the girl does work that she is not even asked to do, and despite the fact that she is sick of the work, she accepts more and more guests. And when he opens his eyes in the morning, all he does until he goes to sleep is work. The prince is embarrassed and wonders if this is because he is no longer with her, after which he asks if the fairy came because the girl needs a lot of money. But then the little girl just starts hitting the prince on the head and screams that his head only thinks about this. Tara tries to object, but the fairy only asks what it means and whether he thinks that from now on it is wrong to come to her more often. The guy says that maybe this is so, and the fairy asks if he will come even in the same state of mind as he was before. But the guy says that even if he goes there like this, it will be impossible for Sharabi to see him, although she saw him when he fell under the hot hand of the spirit of the rotten tree, because then he was filled with the power of the spirit. But if he doesn't have spiritual abilities like he does, then it will be difficult to see such a ghostly appearance. The fairy understands that this guy's spiritual abilities are a little different, But since the spirits have been using and tempering their abilities for many years, they can see him. But then the guy just asks if everything will be okay since the fairy flew so far away. He says that Sharabi's power has an effect on the garden's spirits, and if she wanders around like this, she will remain a burden for Sharabi. But the fairy only asks what the guy thinks about the young lady, because the range of Sharabi's abilities is unrealistically huge. When such a small spirit as she flies such distances, it is comparable to ships at sea. Then the fairy remembers something. She flies up to Tara and says that there is a way. The young man asks what way she is talking about, and the fairy continues and says that she means a way that will help him talk to Sharabi. Then other fairies fly out of the bushes, and the little girl with pink hair says that they will convey to him what Sharabi says, and to her his words. The young man asks what she is talking about, and the fairy claims that both he and Sharabi can see them. And if the lady with pink hair is not able to see him with her own eyes, then they must listen to what he wants to say and convey to her. The guy thinks that this method will really work if he just wants to praise her. But he remembers that evening and realizes that he won't be able to say the most important words that way. But he thinks that it doesn't matter if at least he doesn't have to wait all the time. He thanks the fairy and says that although it will be difficult now because he needs to finish some things, he will come on time, so let them wait for him. The fairies smile and then fly away saying that they understand, but then tell him not to be too late, and on top of everything else, he must definitely come before Sharabi goes crazy. But when they fly away, the young man only says that he doesn't think she could go crazy because of him. Then the young man turns around and goes back from the balcony to his office, but there is already someone waiting for him. The guy asks if it is Hyun Nim. Tara apologizes and says that he has something to think about, but he does not finish his sentence. The crown prince looks at his brother and thinks about that lady with pink hair, after which he turns to Tara and says that all the obligatory business is finished so he can go out, but only if he can stand up for himself. The purple-haired boy asks him what he means with a smile on his face, and the crown prince only recalls his conversation with the emperor and claims that His Majesty the Emperor gave permission. He said that Tara was already quite grown up, and therefore could not hide in the palace forever. And also because of what happened, he said that he realized the fact that the guy is a little boy to be so distracted by him. Tara only smiles brighter. And when the crown prince looks at his brother, he remembers the past. Previously, during a fire, the crown prince helped him get away from the burning building. And after that, they tried to poison Tara. Due to the existence of a mysterious enemy that tirelessly set up ambushes for him, the young man was constantly in a depressed state. However, now he himself wants to go out. The purple-haired boy says that to be honest, he is done with work for today, so he asks if it is okay if he goes out. The ruby-haired guy sighs, picks up the documents, and tells him to come back after a more thorough examination. After this, they go down to the lower floor, and Tara says goodbye to her brother. The ruby-haired boy uses his ability and says that his brother has only one way to leave the Imperial Palace. Tara, with a smile on her face, says that she knows. And a few days later, it's time for the ball. The main character wanders around her garden and arranges plants. She curses Yuvlin. The girl with the golden hair said that she couldn't work on a day like today because she had to dress the prince. And the young lady asked if this was the end, and then wondered if she should close the door, but someone called out to her from behind and asked her to wait. A little while later, the main character is heading in a carriage, and ordinary people, despite this, say that it looks like this carriage is going straight to the palace. The only one who can't calm down is the young lady sitting in it. The girl understands that her choice fell on something that evokes stronger feelings and at the same time is less remarkable. Yuvlin, holding a wig and dress in her hands, claimed that she was a perfect fit for the image of the main character of a cute fairy tale, and that the wig would also help hide her pink hair, which was too conspicuous. The young lady, of course, liked this outfit, because it was like the heroine from Alice in Wonderland, and Yuvlin herself was excited about creating the image. But the young lady thinks that getting involved in such an adventure right before the ball is a little dangerous. When the girl heads to the palace, the knights tell her to show their invitation. Well, one of the butlers says that he heard that this man was called by His Highness himself. Glam passes by. He sees the whole situation and comes closer. The knight claims that he was told that this man was personally invited by His Highness. The main character says with a smile on her face that she is glad to see Glam. He freezes for a second, and then the realization comes to him. After which the man claims that he was waiting for her. His Highness is expecting a young lady, so they should pass quickly. As Sharabi walks down the hallway, she realizes that she hasn't gotten used to these shoes yet, so they're incredibly uncomfortable. At this time, Glam says that the girl is truly incredible. If it weren't for her voice, he wouldn't have recognized her. The main character says that she also admires Yuvlin's skill, because the girl simply made another person out of her. The servant asks if she is talking about that elementalist from a foreign land. And then, when they approach the door, the servant claims that the girl is there. He bows and says that there is still a little time left before the start of the celebration, so they will meet His Highness later at the ball venue. The main character thanks him for seeing her off, and then goes through that door. The young lady looks around, but suddenly her gaze falls on someone else. The girl sees a guy with ruby hair. Looking at him, she understands that this is the crown prince. But the girl is shocked by this. The guy smiles when he sees her and says how many years and winters it has been, and then asks how she is doing. The young lady recalls lying on the floor and claims that everything is fine now, but the appearance of His Highness. But he doesn't let her finish and says that Tara is now being dressed up by an elementalist. He touches his ears and says that he really doesn't know where this character is from. The main character realizes that she is Alice and the guy is the White Rabbit. The young lady wonders if Yuvlin is going to dress Tara as the characters from that opera. Then Sharabi looks at the crown prince and thinks that since this is a fairy tale from another world, he wears this suit without knowing what it is. But suddenly the door swings open and Yuvlin cries out that this time it really is a masterpiece. The girl comes out with a young man dressed in tablecloths and says that the young lady's face formed the basis of the outfit, and she even applied makeup, so that she turned out to be a talented actress. Sharabi looks at her friend and says that means she is the Black Queen, and then asks why the guy is wearing a scarf. Yuvlin claims that this is a way to present a masterpiece to the world at the right moment. And at that moment, a rumor comes into the room, screaming for them to come in. The guy under the scarf addresses Sharabi. He claims that he heard from the spirits that her condition is strange, and then asks if the girl is okay. The main character understands what he is talking about and answers that it's not that anything happened, but she just thought that it was worth trying to live her own way. But then the main character asks what's wrong. The guy under the scarf is silent. And then he says that these are the funniest words he has heard from her in all the time they have known each other. Sharabi clenches his fist and says that this is not funny at all, so he shouldn't say that, because this scarf could fly off at any second. After that, they continue on their way. The young lady says that it seems that the prince is very busy lately. Tara claims that he is not even able to visit the nearest store, and he only knows that it is located very close to the Imperial Palace. The guy claims that he wanted to go there. The main character understands what he is talking about, so she says with a smile on her face that she will wait. After which, they both enter the hall. The main character is in shock. She thinks that now she understands what the world of the aristocracy is like. The young lady realizes that there is money literally everywhere there. The girl takes a drink from the table, but when she turns around, the prince has already disappeared. The main character wonders where he went again, but suddenly one of the servants cries out that His Majesty the Emperor has arrived. The main character looks at the man with red hair and realizes that this is Tara's father. She thinks how similar these two are. But then Sharabi meets His Highness's gaze. The young lady realizes that their gazes just met. The Emperor goes out to the messenger and says that today's celebration is dedicated to the return of Tara. He says that the people are enjoying the celebration more than he thought, so he is very happy. The Emperor raises his glass and says to have fun and not think about anything. The main character tries to step forward, but she immediately trips back over her shoe, and just as the young lady is about to fall, someone grabs her from behind. It turns out it's the Crown Prince. He says that the young lady is apparently not yet used to the shoes. And it seems that she has grown up, but the girl's health is not to be envied. The ruby-haired guy says that when she went to prison for falsely accusing her of putting a maid into eternal sleep, then Tara independently proved her innocence to His Majesty. So he knows her. Hyunam says that the girl is the first person Tara has shown such great interest in, although communication with people is definitely not his strong point, because he is awkward and bad at expressing his feelings. But for her, he always does his best. His Highness pats the protagonist on the back and says that he just wants her to know, after which the main character heads towards a crowd of girls surrounding one guy. This young man turns out to be Tara. When he sees Sharabi, he immediately joins her, and then he approaches her ear and whispers something. The next morning, the main character looks tired, but she immediately plunges her head into a sink full of water and thinks that the guy has definitely gone crazy. The lady with pink hair is racking her brains over the question of why he did this. She remembers how last night a guy came up to her and said that there were so many people there that it was awkward. He asked if she had ever thought about going outside. The young lady asked him what he was talking about. The young man says that if she doesn't want to go into the garden, then let them at least go out onto the terrace. The main character understands that he has bought her out. She says that she doesn't mind, because if they are stared at like that, then they definitely won't be able to have a normal conversation. Then the two of them go out onto the balcony. The fairies immediately surround the main character and ask if she has come out to get some fresh air. But the young lady is just a little angry and tells them that she told them to watch the house. The prince says that it seems the little girls have followed her. But after these words, the young lady is shocked. She immediately rushes at the guy. He smiles and asks what's wrong with her, but the main character says that she has the same question and asks if he was looking at a spirit just now. She immediately starts pawing at him, checking if he is alive, and then asks if he is dead. When the girl looks at his hands, she says that no matter how he said that he wanted to see spirits, how could he turn so white, and the guy definitely looks like a living dead man. The young man only says that it's just makeup, but then he puts his hand on her face and asks her to stop, because he is completely alive and well. He looks at his hand and wonders if the powder Yuvlin used made his skin so pale. And then he looks at Sharabi and says that she has changed quite a bit too. Then he reaches out to her face and takes a strand of hair into his hands. The main character asks him if he likes her golden hair. The guy claims that there are many other ladies with light hair. At first he thought it was terribly cliched and banal, but he claims that the color suits the main character very well. The young lady thinks that, of course, because they don't even choose their own hair color. But the young man only pulls a strand of her hair to his face and kisses it. The main character is terribly embarrassed by this. She thinks about what happened and why she is behaving this way. The girl thinks that this is not the sound of her heart beating wildly right now. The young lady thinks why there is such an atmosphere and what to answer her. The guy just looks at her questioningly. The main character says that her throat is dry and she should probably drink something, after which he drinks a whole glass of wine in one gulp. Tara says that he doesn't know exactly why he started seeing spirits, but he thinks that it is because he has been out of his body for a long time, and the more you use your abilities, the more they develop. The young man claims that he has been allowed to leave the palace, the celebration will soon be over, and things will more or less return to normal, and perhaps he will be able to return to the shop. Sharabi asks if he really wants to go to work, but the guy replies that he doesn't. And then the young gentleman comes up to her and says that he just wants to see her. Sharabi remembers that Tara said that he wanted the day to come when he could meet her and confess his feelings while he was truly alive. The young lady looks at the prince and understands that today is the day when that very moment must come. So she immediately snatches the glass of wine from the guy's hands and drinks it in one gulp. The young man turns to Sharabi and says that it is alcohol. The main character, all red, says that she knows and asks if it is important now, and then puts the empty glass on the balcony railing. The girl then approaches Tara and asks Togo if he likes her. The guy looks away, all red, and then looks back. He says that everything is so. And the main character only asks if he says all this because the alcohol has gone to his head. The young man says that of course he drank, but only to gain courage, and now he is of sound mind. The main character is just thinking. She has heard something like this before. Sharabi thinks how that guy felt back then. The young lady remembers all the events that happened to her. At first, it was her death and rebirth in another world as Sharabi. Then the girl met many spirits, including Lifalea, and she had to say goodbye to some of them. After this, there was an incident with a rotten tree and the spirit of which she saved from eternal torment. The main character clutches her dress and says she doesn't know. She claims her soul feels so empty when the guy isn't around. She wants him to be near. The girl thinks she doesn't want to say that her heart is fluttering, so she says she's not excited. The guy clenches his fists and says that he understands everything, because the girl is only 19. Tara understands the girl who lived without a guardian, who alone and steadfastly endured numerous losses, a situation in which you cannot fall in love with someone at the snap of your fingers. He approaches the window that gives them a view of the hall and blocks it, after which he turns to the main character and asks if she knew that he would be a vampire, and the young lady understands that nevertheless the guy spoke. The young man approaches her and takes her hand, after which he claims that they say vampires drink human blood in order to preserve their youth and beauty, and they are also able to charm people with magic. The guy comes even closer to her. He whispers in her ear whether she says that her heart is not fluttering and then moves a strand of hair. Then he moves closer to her neck and kisses her gently. Then the guy moves away a little, and he tells the main character that then he will drink her blood and tells the young lady to capture him. Sharabi is all red and doesn't realize what's happening now, and the guy easily bites her neck, after which he moves away. The main character looks at him all red, but then looks away. And Tara says again that he likes her. He claims that he is not forcing her, however. He slowly approaches her, and then their lips touch in a tender kiss. When the prince kisses his beloved, he feels these feelings consume him. Their hands are intertwined, and the young lady is already standing on her toes. After they break the kiss, Tara states that she must know how long he has wanted to stand this close to her. The young man hugs Sharabi again and says that he has dreamed of telling her about his feelings for a long time. The main character is all red. Now she can feel that Tara's heart is beating at the same speed as hers. But the young lady sighs, and then pushes the prince away from himself and heads towards the exit of the balcony. Tara asks if something happened, but Sharabi only claims that her throat is dry, so she will go and drink some water. Yuvlin is enjoying the goodies from the table, but a moment later she sees that Sharabi has already arrived. The young lady hands her a piece of cake and asks her if she can even imagine how amazing the cake is, and then tells her to open her mouth. But the main character ignores her and only reaches for another glass, and then dries it. Yuvlin tells the young lady that it is alcohol. The main character does not listen to her and only reaches for another glass. After she has already emptied more than 5 of these, Yuvlin asks what happened. The young lady says that it was hers, but then falls silent, and Yuvlin excitedly tells her to continue. Well, the main character just covers her mouth with her hand and says that she is going to vomit, after which she heads for the exit and empties her stomach behind one of the corners of the imperial palace. Yuvlin looks at her friend with concern, and after this, Sharabi just lies down on the ground contentedly. But when she looks up, she thinks that everything is swimming before her eyes, and then she falls asleep completely. But now in the morning, remembering all this, she immediately immerses her face completely in water. After her morning water procedures, she leaves the bathroom, but there she is immediately met by Yuvlin. She asks why Sharabi is taking so long, because she already thought that the girl had managed to choke while washing herself. But the young lady only looks away. Then the golden-haired lady comes up to her and asks if something happened between her and Tara. The main character only asks whether she has to answer what exactly and plops down face down on the table. The girl says that on the one hand there was something between them, but on the other hand there seemed to be nothing special. After the main character passed out in the garden, Yuvlin tried to drag her to the restroom, but the prince stopped them and asked if they were leaving already. Yuvlin Fat said that, as he could see, this girl had had quite a few drinks and he would put her to bed someday, and as soon as she sobered up, the girl would take her to her place. The main character screams that it's all because of work, and she's busy, but the girl doesn't finish her sentence. The prince says that he will prepare a room for rest, and if the young lady is busy, then nothing can be done. And instead, he will soon come to the store, so she must wait. But the main character only screams something, but then covers her mouth with her hand. Tara inhales and asks if she would like to see the only worker in her garden, Sharabi. The girl looks at him in shock, and Yuvlin says that she is drooling. And the main character says that she never thought that she would fall head over heels in love with him. The prince only laughs in response to this. And the main character, now remembering this, cannot even raise her face from that table. Yuvlin puts his hand to his forehead and says that in any case, the young lady has sobered up and that is good. After which she says that she needs to leave for a while, so Sharabi should not cause problems. And if she doesn't go to a regular client, then we can assume that the job is over. But the main character only asks where she is heading. The lady with golden hair says that she is going to the palace, and the main character says that the celebration is over. But the girl only says that it seems that the crown prince wants to ask for something, and that is probably why he specifically sent her an invitation. Whether it is a problem with the spirit or something else, he has something to say in any case. So the girl stretches, then turns to the main character and pats her on the head, after which she says goodbye. The pink-haired lady was just wondering when the crown prince and emperor became so close to Yuvlin. The main character wonders if something really happened between them at the celebration, but suddenly someone enters the shop and addresses Sharabi. When the main character turns around, she sees a familiar face there. It turns out to be that same night. He says that he is glad to see the lady and asks if he can come in, and also if there is no one else there. The main character looks at him and understands that she is all alone. There was someone else who motivated her to work, but she has already completely forgotten about him. The girl understands that the guy came the day before the celebration. That day, having finished applying makeup and closing the doors of the Sharabi garden, a voice was heard that was in a hurry to call her. But the young lady completely forgot about it. Then the guy came up to her and claimed that he needed to meet the owner of this garden. The guy asked if the working day was over, and the main character only asked what he was talking about. Then the knight, looking at her again, realized that it was Sharabi. He said that he could not believe that it was the lady, and then asked why she looked like that. The young lady asked how and why and showed the invitation to the masquerade ball. The girl asks if the knight knew about this, but he only claims that, to be honest, he was removed from his position, so he is not aware of the events at the palace. The main character does not think much about it at first, but then the realization comes to her and she screams in shock. They pushed him away. Young people understand that the palace knights are people who receive the salary of the country, that is, civil servants. It is like an iron bowl for rice. The young lady wonders if it was possible to refuse the status of an imperial knight. And the purple-haired boy says that there is one more thing he must say, and this is that at the moment he is wanted, so he asks if the lady could hide him in her shop for a while. Sharabi is even more shocked by this. She screams why he is wanted and then jumps away from him. The girl takes a shovel in her hands and asks if he finished off the man. Rosa immediately waves her hands and says that he is not capable of such cruelty. The young lady looks at the sword in its sheath, but the boy says that they are not looking for him because he has harmed anyone. He sighs and says that if the girl is so interested, then he will tell her, and besides, he has something to tell her. The young lady does not understand what he is talking about and wonders what the former knight of the imperial palace and now wanted criminal could tell her. So the young lady says that she is busy now, and the guy with purple hair says that then maybe he will come in and wait inside. But the young lady only asks whether it is possible to let visitors into an empty store. Then the young man almost cries and grabs the young lady's leg. He asks if he can at least wait outside because he will just be hiding from there in the garden. Sharabi is ready to refuse him, but when she looks at those puppy eyes that are about to cry, who can say a word? And after that, she remembers everything that the guy did for her and says that he should do as he wants. Then the knight with purple hair is very happy, and the main character leaves. But after that, a fairy flies up to her and whispers in her ear who this is, and whether this guy is her friend, a visitor, or a thief. Another fairy claims that he scares her and maybe she should throw him out. The main character claims that he is not her friend, but he is not a robber either. Sharabi says that she also doesn't quite understand what kind of relationship they have, so she tells the fairies to just watch him so he doesn't do anything wrong. Now the main character understands that he wanted to tell her something. The girl understands that she, of course, you listened to what happened, but it is better to tell him everything right away as it is. Therefore, the main character uses her powers, and when the guy approaches one of the plants, who asks what kind of tree it is because he doesn't remember seeing it before. But before the young man can finish speaking, he sees a fairy inside one of the flowers. He turns to the young lady and wants to say something, but when he sees her, he has no other words except admiration. The main character crosses her arms over her chest and says that the guy is still there, as she sees him as a wanted criminal. She sits down at the table and hands the knight a glass of water, after which she says that she hopes the guy won't talk nonsense. The purple-haired boy says that this is too much because she hasn't even heard the topic of conversation yet, and she's already reacting like that. He claims that this is not nonsense at all, because it is about the duty that the girl bears on her shoulders. The main character immediately jumps up from her chair and asks how he found out. But the knight only smiles and suggests continuing because this story is a bit confusing, after which he folds his arms and asks if she has any interest. The young lady asks if he is talking about her debt, and the guy agrees. He claims that is what he means. And then you ask what if that same debt is paid back in double amount. Sharabi says that can't be. My boyfriend just says to never say never. He rises from his chair and approaches the main character. He calls her mistress, and then you think it would be better to call her boss. The guy asks if she even knows how her parents are living now. The young lady thinks this is about her parents. Of course she doesn't know because it's obvious. There had been no news from the parents for several years, and how could Sharabi know about them? However, it is impossible not to find clues if you do everything to find the person. But Sharabi had no intention of actively searching for her parents. Well, if that's the case, then perhaps she still doesn't understand why it happened, and maybe it was fate that they let go of her hand on that fateful day. But the young lady wonders what if her parents didn't abandon her, but instead they settled in the capital of Vitria and made a name for themselves. The girl thought that perhaps even if they heard about her, it would be too late. But the knight only tells the girl to think about whether people who have lost their daughter can live happily ever after without paying off their debts. The main character wonders what this means and then falls silent. The fairies circle around her and ask if everything is okay. They then approach the knight and tell him to get out. But Sharabi tells them to wait and thinks that she should find out what the lady thinks. Then the fairies leave the knight alone and fly up to the main character, They ask if it wouldn't be better to just kick him out like street vendors. Because if Sharabi doesn't like him, then let him just say so and they'll dig a hole for him. The purple-haired boy is struck by this overprotectiveness, and the main character just turns to him and tells him to tell her everything as it is. Then the girl claims that she is all ears. After that, the knight begins his story. He says that he was a spy and knight of the Virasbi Empire. He was sent to steal the secrets of the Ventrian Empire, because the three empires of Virasbi, Ventria, and Zelman do not get along with each other. Then the main character asks why he is in a country like this, but the guy asks how he would know what his superiors are thinking. But after that, the young lady only says that he said that he would reveal the truth and asks if he thinks that he revealed it. The guy leans his hand and says that what he said is the main comment. And in fact, he certainly knows the reason. The main character is only angry at his actions. Then the young man with purple hair just waves his hands and asks him to calm down. And then he says that if she acts so rashly with him, she might accidentally start a war. The young lady just calmly asks if he can win if a war starts, and the guy immediately says no, and he adds that he himself will surrender. But it is not about him and her, but about Virasbi and Ventria. The main character is a little shocked by this, and she comes to the realization of what is happening. She says that the guy is funny and asks what kind of prince Virasbi is. The guy sighs and says that it is not that, but their country is a country of knights, so they value each of them very much. The young lady simply asks if this is a joke, and the young man sighs and understands that she does not trust him. But he says that in any case, Sharabi lent the money and now honestly admitted it, and thus it seems his boss will trust him at least a little. The guy says that as she already knows, his name is Kale Ben Pateria. As the young lady already knows, Kale Ben Pateria is a knight of the Virasbi Empire. The guy adds that his age is 22 years old, and he is the deputy head of the delegation of the Fourth Order of Knights of the Virasbi Empire. Sharabi is a little shocked by this information, and the guy immediately spreads his arms and says that it may be hard to believe that he is the deputy head of the delegation at this age, but it is true. The main character just screams that she is not talking about this and asks if the guy wants to say that such a person is 22 years old. Then the young man understands what she is talking about. He says many people say she also looks young for a 19-year-old. The main character blushes a little and screams that this is all because she is short. After this, the guy says that in any case, they want to take her to the Virasbi Empire. And the reason is, of course, her abilities, but she makes the natural decision. But he is still a knight of his country and is in a position where he must do everything in his power. But now in this situation, it seems to him that the boss will not listen to whatever he suggests. So he puts a suitcase on the table and suggests that they first solve the boss's case. He puts a stack of papers on the table and tells the girl to read them. When the main character flips through it, she is even more surprised with each page. She was wondering what kind of debt document it was, but it looks like a copy, where not only the total amount is recorded, but also when and how much she pays. The guy claims that this is her debt document, and then he takes another stack of papers out of his bag and hands it to the lady with pink hair. He says that this is the content of the fact that her parents paid off their debts. The young lady understands that if you are not a fool, you can understand how many years they paid off a huge amount of money, and the debtor is now reimbursed by his parents, who do not even know about this news. Both parties pay the same amount to the same organization twice every month. The purple-haired boy claims that whether she believes the contents of the document or not is up to her to decide. However, now that she knows this information, she is not going to stupidly give up. The young lady just says that it's bad. The guy agrees and says that of course it is, because it costs twice as much money. But the young lady only says that she is not talking about this. The young man is surprised by this and does not understand what she is talking about then. But the main character only says that she feels bad because he secretly checked her background, and feels bad because his eyes look at her like a test, and then says that she feels bad because he suddenly came and started talking about her parents. The young lady says that it irritates her so much. The guy is a little puzzled by this. He turns to the young lady and says that it seems that she is too young and therefore does not know much. The main character just slaps the table and tells him to look at himself, because he himself still has milk on his lips. The girl asks if he cannot pretend to be an adult when he himself is only 22. Or does he think that if he is older, then it means he has managed to see a lot? The girl says that no matter how much she wants to, she cannot be 100% sure of his words. She says that she will believe him only when he brings her the appropriate evidence. Kale just waves his hands and says that if she so wishes, then she can check for herself whether it is true or not. Then the young lady grabs the documents and says that she will do as she pleases then. and then she tells him not to talk to her as if she should honor him now. The purple-haired boy understands that this is much more difficult than he thought, but still he has nowhere to go. So he asks how about a mutually beneficial deal. And since he has provided her with some very important information, maybe she will do something for him as a token of gratitude. But the main character just looks at the papers and asks what to do with it, and if that's all, and then says that she thinks she has nothing more to discuss with them. Well, when she looks at the knight, she sees that he is dejected and does not understand what happened. Then she asks us if he hurt somewhere. Well, the guy just says that he was just so nervous while running back and forth and his stomach started to hurt a little. After that, the young lady is in the garden. She touches one of the trees and uses her power. She says that they can try to make something for him from whatever is ripe. And with her powers, she grows red berries. The boy had noticed this before, but she really has unusual abilities. The young lady only turns to him. She hands the guy a couple of berries and tells him not to spit them out but to eat them properly, because in her shop they are worth gold. The guy says that not long ago she was ready to kick him out and asks why Sharabi is helping him. But the girl only says that he himself asked how about a mutually beneficial deal. So everything is fair. And in exchange for the information he gave her, she gives him her medicine. The boy says that this is not like her at all and claims that she is too delicate, after which he swallows the berries that the young lady gave him. Then he looks at his hand and asks if all this turns out to be true. What will she do? The young lady only thinks for a moment, then folds her hands and says angrily that they will need to be properly taught a lesson. The guy sighs and says that with abilities like hers, she definitely won't need his help. But the young lady only asks what he's muttering under his breath again. She says that he gave her the information and she should figure it out on her own. Or did he think that since he was such an adult, he could just come and tell everything and run away flashing his heels? But the guy only claims that she just asked him to stop pretending to be an adult. The guy sighs and says, okay. And in that case, in exchange for his help, he demands a place to stay for the night. But the young lady says that it is not so simple. If he wants to stay there, then he will have to become a worker in her shop. But the flower waterer's position is already taken. The knight then asks if she will take him on as a mercenary for a while. But the main character claims that there already is one, and that her abilities are even better than his. Then the knight asks how he will start hiring him as a laborer. Yeah, the main character says that in essence, the duties are the same, and then says that now she thought that he was kind of wanted. The guy is hurt by these words and says that before this, he was an imperial knight and always wore a helmet, and they drew it in an incomprehensible way, because it doesn't look like him at all. So the girl shouldn't worry about this at all. Then the young lady agrees and says that he will deal with household issues. The young man agrees about the main character, saying that he should not even hope for a salary. The fairies whisper among themselves. One says that she understands that the girl is their creator, but she is a lousy leader. And the other says that, not to mention that she does not pay Terra for his work. The main character only turns to the fairies and says furiously then, "Stop whispering." Ophelia immediately fly away. What the ranger says, that no matter how much he looks at them, he still does not believe. He claims to know that spirits are born in nature, but to think that they so unquestioningly carry out human orders. The young lady understands that the most famous shaman in this world is, of course, Yuvlin. She can calmly control the spirits as if they were her subjects, and the girl is such a unique person that the spirits do not even hesitate to follow her orders. However, in Sharabi's case, it is completely different. The girl is not able to dictate or force them in any way. And on the contrary, she is like a real friend to them, because the young lady is a real gardener. The girl gradually collects documents and says that no matter what happens in the world, nothing will surprise her anymore. The young lady heads for the door and turns to her handyman. She says she needs to go check if these documents are true, so she will be gone for a while, and he should look after the shop in the meantime. The guy in shock asks if he will look after the store, but the main character threatens to tell him that if he just tries to accept a client in her absence, he will get into trouble. And then she leaves. The guy, left alone, thinks how strange Sharabi is, because just recently she was ready to almost pounce on him, and now she left him alone to watch the store. But suddenly the guy hears someone screaming, someone calls Sharabi and asks where she is. The stranger cries out that he has one request and it is a matter of utmost importance. But the fairies that fly around the night say that it is better to do as Sharabi said and not let in visitors. One of the fairies says that when Terra was there, things were going well. The young man understands that it seems that even spirits are used to working with people. He remembers the name Terra, and he realizes that the fairies are probably talking about the prince. The knight thinks that it is surprising that Sharabi has so many connections. The truth is that there must be such a number of them that she has to be very careful. Otherwise, if a prince suddenly shows up there, the public will be in an uproar, and journalists will continue to wait under the windows. Suddenly, one of the fairies flies up to the guy and asks if he is really human. But the young man only asks what she is talking about. One of the fairies says that he may be able to deceive Sharabi, but he will definitely not be able to fool them. Then one of them says that his smell is not at all like a human one. So the fairy says, is he really a catman? Kael is shocked by what he heard, and the fairies just look at each other and say that this is 100% true, and if the young lady finds out, her eyes will probably bulge with anger. One of them says that maybe it would be better to just run away while there is still time, and the other asks why the guy even stopped there. The knight merely places his hand on the port and says that he has his reasons for doing so. But the fairy only asks him if it seems to him that this is not a completely normal case, and says that it is so much so that cat people extremely dislike people, but are forced to live with them. The guy folds his arms and says he needs to find something. He says nothing will happen if it stays between them, and then he asks if they can keep it a secret from Sharabi. After all, judging by how she treats them, the girl doesn't seem like an evil person. But you never know what to expect from people. The fairies look at each other and then say that they won't tell her. Well, at least they'll try. But Tara will probably guess, and Sharabi will notice sooner or later too. Then the fairy turns to the knight and asks if he will just tell everything as it is, and then asks what he is looking for. The young man thinks that he tried in every way to find her, but he never asked the spirits about it. But they certainly know about it. In addition, these are plant spirits, and they may well have useful information for him, but they communicate too closely with people, and should he tell them about it? The guy looks at the fairies and thinks that if he continues to be constantly afraid of everything, then maybe he will not be able to achieve his goal at all. Because one way or another, their energy has not become clouded in the least. So the boy raises his head and claims that he is looking for a healing herb. The fairies ask him what he is talking about. The young man says that a terrible epidemic has begun in his home village and no one can cope with it. According to the elders, the only thing that can save the villagers is the herb Pemiharis. However, the problem is that it has no smell and no taste at all. The guy understands that he could look for her somewhere in the forests or among the fields. But even the charm that cat people possess did not help in this matter. He and several of his companions decided to move there, taking on human form. Once they found themselves among people, the first thing they did was go to the market, buying up all possible herbs that could be of any use. The pink-haired fairy thinks and asks her friend if she thinks they've heard this somewhere before, because she definitely remembers someone talking about it. Then one of the fairies flies up to the knight and asks if he should ask Sharabi about it, because she must know for sure. But the fairy doesn't have time to finish her sentence as Sharabi enters the store and asks what the guy should ask her for. The young man is a little surprised and asks how she ended up there, but the main character only says that she didn't really hear anything since she just returned. And then he asks what he wanted to ask for, but he only tries with all his might to show the fairies that they should not say a word about it, after which he smiles and says that it's nothing special, and the young lady shouldn't worry about it because he can handle it without her help. The young man then asks how she went, how everything went, and whether she was able to verify the information. The girl says that regarding this, they said that checking the documents would take about a week, so all they can do is wait. But then the guy immediately jumps up from his seat and grabs the young lady by the hands. He cries out joyfully if he can stay there and then continues asking her. The main character puts her hand on her head and sighs. She realizes that now she also has a general worker under her command. A little while later, the guy is already carrying pots of earth, but suddenly he hears the main character scream that she will never do this. But the guy just asks Milady how this is possible. He says that he understands everything. But why are the prices suddenly so high? The main character only asks if he says that he understands everything and thinks that she does not know at what price her goods are sold. She also asks if he thinks it's too much, since the guy buys plants for only 5 gold pieces and sells them for as much as 15. So the young lady asks if he wanted to get rich that much and says that she seemed to have repeated more than once that this variety costs no more than 10 gold pieces, and the guy apparently did not hear. So the main character takes the contract and tears it to shreds. The Piranja is shocked by this and asks her to wait. The young lady says that this is a breach of contract and their future cooperation is over, so the guy can go free. The guy collects the remains of the contract with trembling hands and then screams out who she thinks she is, but the main character screams back at him who he thinks he is. She says that Mr. Hammond himself begged her so much that she even agreed to hand over exclusive trading rights, but she thinks that they should still accept her proposals. Then the young man asks why she lied at her age, because she probably doesn't know that adults don't do that. But the main character just turns around and claims that she won't repeat it again and he knows where the exit is. The guy just clutches the remains of the contract in his hands and says that she will regret it. The main character turns around and asks what he is talking about. But he only says that it seems that her store has started to rapidly gain momentum and the additional staff has come in handy. But isn't the young lady afraid that she might face consequences? Because making enemies among high-ranking people is a lost cause. So the little girl should listen carefully. But Sharabi only gets angry and wonders if he's trying to threaten her. After all, this usually happens in stores, but her store is not like the others. Therefore, the main character tells him to forgive him. But Mr. Hammond is not the only one who is interested in buying exclusive goods, and there is a whole sea of people who want to. But in any case, you can just stop selling them. After which, the young lady says that she doesn't think that this will somehow affect the store's business. The guy looks at her with an angry look and says that there is nothing wrong with the store, but what will happen if something happens to the owner, and how will the store exist without him? Especially if we are talking about a small shop that can afford only 2 employees. The main character asks what he said, but the guy just turns around and leaves. The knight asks Sharabi if everything is okay, and young Oleg Yuryevich turns around and says that it will take a lot of time. Then she sits down at the table and Kale gives her a cup of tea. The guy understands that the girl seems to be in a bad mood, and maybe it's because of the documents. There are about 2 days left until their authenticity is established, so the guy asks what the girl will do. But the lady with pink hair only asks what he is talking about. The knight adds that if the information he gave her turns out to be true, then what will the girl do? The main character then chokes on her tea. She says that she gave him medicine and asks if he is sick again. He just sits down on a chair and says that if the young lady wants, then it is not difficult for him to finish them off, and the young lady only needs to hint. After that, silence hangs between them. The young lady only asks if he's completely crazy, acting like a real villain. The girl asks how he even came up with such an idea, and maybe they are looking for him not because he is a spy, but because he killed someone. But the purple-haired boy can't help but laugh at this and says that wouldn't it be easier to just go and finish them off? Sharabi only says what a psycho he is, but then claims that first impressions can be deceiving. But the guy just continues and asks if there is anything wrong with that, and why he can't kill the person who tried to harm her. But the young lady just jumps up and screams for him to stop talking about it, because despite the fact that he is a man and a cat, everything is different for people. The guy is shocked by her words, and the young lady continues and says that you can't just say that you're going to kill someone, but the young man only asks how she found out. The main character doesn't understand what he's talking about, but the guy only asks again how she knew he wasn't human, and the main character covers her mouth and says that it just came out on its own. The purple-haired boy says that it turns out she knew about it and hid it, after which he reaches for his sword and asks if the young lady will also try to sell it like the others did, or even worse, try to take revenge on him for those ill-fated documents. But the lady with pink hair only asks if this is a dream or if the guy is just paranoid. Kale just asks in surprise what she's talking about, and the main character asks if he thinks he's the only hybrid who came to her store. Of course, you don't often meet cat people in the area, but he is clearly not the first and not the last who has been there. Vitka, young lady, and elves have come. And even the mermaid fairies who live only in water, and besides, she had already met one of the cat people. The guy immediately jumps up from his chair and asks what she's talking about, but the main character just calmly asks if he said pemmicaris, because that's the name of this herb. The young man only says that she heard everything from the very beginning, but the main character tells him not to frown so much because she didn't say that she would not have heard it clearly and who speaks so loudly anyway. But in any case, they have been looking for her for quite a long time, because the young man who came to her last time was also looking for her, and she gave her away. The guy, shocked, asks if she says she gave away that expensive herb. He says that it's not good to lie, because Sharabi is already up to her ears in debt, and even if she tries, she'll hardly be able to pay it off. If the young lady manages to return all the stolen money, then perhaps only then will she be able to afford to buy at least one root of this herb. However, being completely in debt, she dares to claim that she gave something so dear to one of their people, and yet she must understand that none of them has human money. But the young lady just leans back in her chair and sighs. She asks why she needs to buy this herb, after which she takes the guy into the garden and touches the ground in one area, and with the help of her powers grows that very grass. The young lady asks again why she should buy it if she can just grow it herself. The guy is a little shocked. He realizes that if you think about it, when it comes to plants, the girl has no equal. so he just thinks why he didn't notice it before. The main character turns to him and asks if he really thought that she wouldn't have enough ability to do it just because it's so hard to get. Sharabi says that the cat's people have often accepted her in the past, so it should work this time too. But the young man says that he still doesn't understand why she's helping them, because she herself knows very well how expensive this poison is. And if she had sold just 3 or 4 roots, she would have been able to pay off all her debts. But the main character only gets up and asks if the guy thinks that she is tired of living. She asks if the guy has ever thought about what will happen if people suddenly find out that her store has 3 or 4 roots of a medicinal herb, and not an easy herb at that. One that is difficult to find even within the walls of the imperial palace. The young lady asks him if he thought that some madmen might try to rob her, and the reason she helps anyway. The girl smiles a little creepily, and then she says that this may sound a bit exaggerated, but she too tried to satisfy her whims. Then one of the fairies remembered that the main character, in exchange for that grass, demanded that she touch the guy's ears and tail until she got tired of it. And this cat then lived there for another week. Then the knight with purple hair understands everything. He says only one word: I need to visit. Sharabi turns to him and asks what he means. The guy asks if he can go and visit them. The main character does not ask if he wants to check on the villagers. The young man says yes and promises that he will definitely return. The lady with pink hair says that she would not care, and if he wants, he can come. And if he wants, he can leave. The guy, when he leaves, says that he will return tonight, and then disappears. The young lady already thinks that apparently he does not particularly care that he is still wanted, because the guy runs so calmly. She turns around and says that she will somehow take and throw him out. But from behind, she hears someone's voice. Without getting acquainted, she asks who she will throw out. When the young lady turns around, she sees Tara there, and the guy says that they haven't seen each other for a long time. The fairies, seeing this, just fly away and say that they will have a good time. The main character, all blushing, asks what time it is. She screams for the fairies to come back quickly, but they don't even think about doing so. The prince only asks if he can come in, after which they head inside the shop. The young man looks back and says that not much time has passed since his last visit, but it seems like an eternity to him. After which he looks at one of the trees and says that it has grown. Then he greets the fairies and then sits down on a chair. But when he does this, something like fur flies into the air. The prince wonders if it is cat fur. And then she sneezes, and the main character remembers that the guy is allergic to cats. The young man asks if she got a cat. Yeah, the main thing is that she doesn't really have one, and it's a long story. But in short, a cat person came there. After this, the young lady heads to the door and offers to go out, while the fairies begin to open the windows. After that, the main character and the prince are sitting in the garden. The girl says that even if the prince has time to come here, then is Yuvlin really that busy? The guy just asks in surprise if Sharabi heard, because he thought she knew. Tara only says that one very important matter came up, so Yuvlin and his brother went outside the empire. The main character is shocked and asks if they left because the girl didn't tell her anything like that. But when the young lady met the prince, she said that Sharabi was hardly interested in such things. The main character is a little angry with her friend, and the guy asks if she remembers that garden in the estate that she revived then. The young lady says that she remembers, but what about that? Tara says it was shortly after their first meeting and the two went to explore it. The young lady asks how they will do this, and the guy replies that they said that if a girl can use spirits, then she can also see memories from the past. And his brother wants to find the person responsible for the arson. Sharabi understands that even in childhood, these two went through a lot. The young lady looks at him and realizes that they have survived so many attempts on their lives. The young man turns around and smiles at the young lady, blushing a little. Sharabi Toad realizes that these two have now grown up and become imperial princes. So they have the power to catch the culprit. The girl says that it turns out that these two are busy with really serious matters. She feels terrible because she can't help in any way. But the prince tries to calm Sharabi down and tells her not to worry because he wouldn't want her to go with them anyway. He sees that the main character has staggered a little, so he pulls her closer to him. He claims that this matter is much more dangerous than she thinks, but he sees that Sharabi is only leaning on him with her eyes closed. So the guy looks away and thinks that there is nothing left. Well, then the main character opens her eyes and asks what he is thinking about. The guy was a little taken aback by this and said that he didn't think anything of it. And then he turns around all red and says that the trail just disappeared so quickly. The main character asks what he is talking about, and then she remembers those events at the ball and immediately turns red. She jumps away from the prince so far that she knocks over the plate of cookies. The girl screams what he is saying, but the young man only says that since everything has passed, he can leave another mark. The main character is already in complete shock from this and is blushing like a tomato, but the guy just continues and says that then she will remember him every time she looks at her. The young lady is shocked by this. She immediately hides behind a tree and screams what is wrong with him and whether the prince has gone crazy. She asks if it's something in the air or if he's just gone crazy. But the young man only rises from his seat and comes closer to Sharabi. He claims that he will come when he has time, come to see her and maybe help her with something like before. The main character looks at him with distrust, but the guy just says that she must have a lot of things to do because he was her only worker, so she probably needs help. For example, to move large pots or heavy boxes. Sharabi says that if he is talking about this, then everything is fine. The young man asks what she is talking about. The main character thinks about how to explain everything, and then says that she seems to have an assistant. But the prince only asks what she is talking about, since she doesn't have any employees. Sharabi says that he is not really a worker and it is connected with her collector, so everything is complicated. The prince asks with which collector and why she didn't say everything right away, but the main character claims that she is saying it now. But the prince just comes up to her and grabs her by the shoulders. He says that the girl could have told earlier. She could come or send a spirit. There are many different ways. The young lady turns to Tara. She asks if he has decided to interrogate her. That same evening, the girl sweeps the ground in her garden. She thinks that both guys are idiots. As the main character is approached by fairies, one of them points to the store and says that Tara still hasn't left, then asks if she's going to ask him. The young lady says she doesn't know, but then a shadow approaches her from behind. The main character doesn't understand who it is, but when he turns around, he sees that same guy and several big guys. She understands that these people definitely did not come there for the trees, and they are clearly up to something bad. One of them approaches the main character and asks what will change if he tells who he is. The lady with pink hair realizes that it is a familiar voice, and then she realizes that this is the same person who was in her this morning. The girl asks, who knows? She asks why they are here and tries to move back. But when she does, she realizes that there are 2 more men behind her. The young lady realizes that this place is far away from the main roads and shops, so she doesn't think she'll be able to escape. No one will hear her. Not even Tara, because he is too deep in the shop. But the young lady's mouth is immediately shut and she is stuffed into a sack. The fairies fly up to her, and the main character screams for her to gather everyone and bring help. The kidnappers are just wondering if everything is at home, and one of them asks who she is talking to. Tara is at the shop at this time. He sighs. But at the same moment, fairies fly up to him and claim that Sharabi is in big trouble. The guy asks what happened, and the fairy replies that she was kidnapped. Then someone from the outside asks if this is serious. The guy says that he can't leave for a second. He comes closer to the prince. And then he says that with Sharabi, every day is fun, and that's for sure. The guy puts his hand on his head and hides his ears. The prince says that this is Verkot, and then claims that he is the same wanted knight. The young man sighs, then tells him to let him get something straight. Varya insists that he is that knight, but he is not a bad guy. The prince only says that the criminal allegedly said otherwise, but Kale tells him to relax. After all, he may have been a spy, but he hardly possessed any valuable information, and he was planning to leave the ranks of the Valavi's knights. But the prince asks why he should believe it. Keel points to the shop and says that if only because he is the errand boy for this shop, Tara says that this is what Sharabi said about him. The young man agrees and says that he is the golden assistant of the big boss, and now he is in her debt. And so for now, he has no plans to leave there. But then he asks His Highness if he can continue to hang out there. He adds that Sharabi was kidnapped. The prince claims that this is true and that she must be saved. But his interlocutor only asks what exactly he is going to do, because as far as he knows, he has no attacking abilities and he doesn't handle a sword very well. So if he goes after her alone, he will bring even more problems. The prince is shocked by this and asks the knight what he is talking about, but he only claims that the young man has little time. This means he doesn't have time to call his knights, so he offers to make a deal. Tara asks what deal he is talking about, and Kale says that he will help him. After all, he was a real knight and would even say that he handled the ball better than others. The prince thinks for a minute. He thinks how hard it is for Sharabi now, so he asks what his interlocutor wants. But he only says that for helping to save Sharabi, he should remove the reward from his head, after which the young man says that this is a simple request. The prince understands that, of course, the reward for his head is just a precautionary measure, because in the end, his identity was identified later. but they have no data on what information he collected on them. And if he does everything correctly, then this request will really be easy to fulfill. The prince says that if the boy has not committed any other crimes, he will consider his offer. But Keel just bows his head and asks if he gives him any guarantees. But then he turns around and says, okay, he'll do it. And then he turns to the spirits and asks if they know who stole her. The fairies claim that they do not know the names, but one of them looked like a man who had come to the shop before quite recently. Well, then the fairy comes to a realization, and she understands that she recognized his voice, because this is the man with whom Sharabi literally broke the contract. Then the guy remembers that it was this morning, and the girl apparently has no instinct for self-preservation. He claims that he knew that something like this could happen. And it's not surprising that she was kidnapped, but the shop doesn't even have a gate. But the guy thinks when she was ever careful, because he just won her trust and was able to get freedom of action in the shop, she even allowed him to stay there. One of the fairies says to follow her, after which Keel goes after her and tells His Highness to follow him too. But the guy just follows his interlocutor and asks if he cannot call him that. But he just turns to him, and then he picks him up, saying how slow His Highness is. Tara is shocked by this, and Keel immediately jumps out over the fence. The main character is in one of the houses at this time. She sits on the floor with her mouth tied. One of the fairies tries to untie the knot and frees the main character's mouth. The young lady asks why this happened just when Yuvlin was away. Sharabi turns around, looking around the room. The purple-haired fairy says that the other fairies have gone for help and the girl shouldn't worry. The main character just sighs and says that she hopes that this help will not be Tara. Then the girl looks at the door and asks if there is someone outside. Then the fairy flies to check. When she flies out, she sees some people talking there. The fairy notices that she knows one of them, and the young lady says it's one of those idiots who came to see them this morning. But the fairy says that she does not mean him, because the man she saw is a collector, a man who comes for their money. Then Sharabi remembers that bastard who barged in. Now she remembers everything. After all, it was he who introduced her to that Hammond guild. It happened shortly after the girl arrived in the capital. After all, when the debt reached 6,000 gold, the man came to the girl who clearly had problems with payments and offered a deal. The guy claimed that if she gave him sole rights to sell, he would forgive her the 100 gold pieces. When Sharabi first opened the store, there were days when the profit was less than 1 gold coin, so she gave in and accepted the offer with tears in her eyes. Now the lady with pink hair understands that if you think about it, it was a real scam, and apparently they found out about it. But all these informant traders are worthless. But then the girl looks at the door and wonders if Eli can be trusted, because the voices are almost inaudible. The main character looks at the window and understands that this is, apparently, the only way to escape. But then the doors to the room open and the main character falls. It turns out to be that same man. He comes into the room and tells the young lady that it is useless to try to escape. He says that she has accumulated a decent debt, and then asks if it's true. Sharabi is ready to finish him off right there, but they decide to calm down because his people are standing behind the door and therefore it's dangerous to make a fuss. But the man just approaches her and says that she has nothing to worry about because putting girls into eternal sleep is not one of their hobbies. Besides, she has a pretty close connection with the Imperial Palace. After which that old man says that he called a person there who can erase memory, so for now the girl should just sit there. The main character looks angrily at this freak, and he only says that just his look is scary. But then screams are heard from the corridor. Then that freak turns around and asks what happened. The guy guarding the entrance says that there is someone outside and they need to check. Then the man comes out and tells the girl to relax because he will be back soon, and then leaves, slamming the door. Sharabi is already furious to the point of being terribly angry. She seems to be burning with anger, but then she looks at the fairy, and he asks her to untie it. But when the little girl with purple hair tries to do it, she says that the knot is too tight and won't untie. The young lady realizes that there is no other choice and she must try until she succeeds. The main character thinks if only she could free her hands. Then the girl tries her best to do it, but unfortunately she doesn't succeed very well. At this time, Kiel is still dragging the prince on himself. The prince screams that he can walk himself so the guy can let him go. But Kiel only says what a shame, and then asks if it isn't faster that way. And His Highness won't be able to catch up with him anyway, no matter how fast he runs. Tara screams that he can get there on horseback, otherwise this situation is no good. But Kiel tells him to just relax because they are almost there. And then he asks if the guy is even going to save the boss. Then the prince falls silent. He understands that this is the main task. Kiel says that there are no objections, so they can continue. But Tara just says that manipulating someone's weak points is such a mean thing. But Kiel only asks what kind of relationship His Highness has with the boss. The guy with Genya will think a lot. And then, a little more dejectedly, he says, if this can even be called a relationship. One of the fairies flies near them and addresses the other, asking if they talk about their relationship after saving Sharabi, and the other just asks if she didn't feel something in the air between them. The guy blushes from such conversations. He doesn't understand what they mean by pity. Kiel just smirks, and then they finally reach the place where Sharabi is apparently sitting. The prince feels dizzy, and Kiel lowers him to the ground. When the guy gets up, Kiel says that Sharabi is not bad, because she grabbed such a guy. But the fairy says that to be more precise, it is Tara who is possessed by Sharabi. Kiel remembers this girl and asks if this is true, but the fairy only says that he constantly annoys her. Then the purple-haired guy asks if he can help and tells Phoenix to consider it a mutual favor. The little girl with golden hair understands that mutual means that she will have to repay him for helping her, so she wonders if this is a good idea, but then turns around and nods in agreement. At this time, the purple-haired fairy tries to untie the knots on Sharabi's hands. She almost succeeds, so the young lady says that the boy there is doing a great job, and at this rate they will soon finish. But the young lady hears some voices from the street. One of them tells the others to make sure she drinks 2 glasses of water before they start erasing her memory. Sharabi realizes that they are already there, but she knows that she can't just give up like that. The fairy tries with all her might to untie these knots and finally succeeds. But it turns out it's a little too late to believe it. Those same guys enter the room. One of them approaches the main character and asks if she heard everything. After which, the guy approaches her and claims that before he erases her memory, he needs answers to some questions. He says that the girl grew up without parents, and it must be hard to hear about her debts. Well, he asks how she knew that the debt is paid in double amount. The lady with pink hair curses this damn information, but the guy tells her to answer, otherwise it will be bad, and he would not like to raise his hand to the girl. Sharabi realizes that if she tells about Kiel, he will be in danger. So the girl just turns to this villain and asks if he will hit her if she doesn't answer. The guy says that then there will be no other choice. The main character says that the person who told about this, but then suddenly he falls silent and asks what to do. The girl apologizes and claims that she has such a bad memory. The young man becomes furious at this. He puts the dagger back into its sheath and says that he himself said that he doesn't enjoy hitting girls. But the main character only says with a smile on her face that this is good, and she doesn't enjoy handing over her people in exchange for her life. Then the guy immediately gives her a hard slap in the face, which makes the young lady's eyes swim, and the guy just grabs her by the collar and asks if she's going to answer. Then he takes out his dagger again and folds it and rushes at Sharabi with it, but suddenly a wind with herbs blows from the window. The villain does not understand what is happening, but he is immediately enveloped in a vine. When the main character opens her eyes, she sees fairies in front of her. They are very hostile towards that guy. The young man asks what this is. He tries to free himself from this vine with a knife, and one of the fairies screams that if he touches Sharabi, she will finish him off. The lady with pink hair notices a small dark energy coming from the fairy. She also says that if that guy hurts Sharabi again, she will not forgive him. The main character remembers the spirit from the rotten tree, so she raises her hand and claims that she is fine and asks the fairies to stop. The guy just turns around and asks if this is her doing. He tries with all his might to free himself from the vine and he succeeds. After that, he grabs the sheath of the dagger and screams that he left the girl alive. And she treats him like that. He swings at her with all his might. But suddenly someone grabs his hand. This guy claims that they say that people who can manipulate the memory of others are much more sensitive, so he decides to check if this is true. When the villain turns around, he sees a guy with purple hair there, but he starts squeezing his hand so hard that the sheath falls out of the villain's hands. KL only asks with a smile on her face if the guy wanted to hit her boss, but the memory manipulator falls to the ground and screams in pain. The main character is swimming before her eyes. Someone covers her and puts a hand on her face, blocking the entire view. The main character thinks that this person's hand smells so nice and it is the smell of herbs, so the girl asks Tara if it is. The boy with the ears only tells the boss not to open his eyes because it will not be the most pleasant sight. And then he takes his sword out of its sheath and says that he will take care of this guy. Then he turns to the villain and says that he dared to hit his boss, so he will make him suffer and regret his actions.